Hello, everybody.
Hi, Gary.
Hello, Mayor Ander.
5, 6. Looks like we got the whole works. How we doing here, Hope?
We're good. From my count, we have everyone. And
Wonderful.
then some.
Well, isn't that great then?
That's the way we like it.
All right. Well, let's call this meeting to order then. And this is, we have the revised agenda for regular council meeting of Monday, February the 8th, 2021. And welcome to all members of the public who might be watching us on YouTube there. Thanks for coming along. So the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have some?
Sorry, my fault.
Okay. Anything they'd like to change or add or?
Just the on-table items that were circulated earlier today, just the revised report for items 6.1 and 7.1.
Yeah.
Those will be added to the agenda tomorrow when we revise it. And then just item 12.5, there was a second letter from Mark Edmonds. Got removed and we'd like it back in. So that'll get included in the revised as well.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, just on that revised report, there's two of them on the development part of it there. One the original and one's the revised.
So one's the report and one's the PowerPoint presentation from Daniel.
Oh, okay,
We'll
great.
present tonight.
All right. Okay, thanks for that.
No problem.
Everybody got those? Okay, super.
Yes.
Move to approve the agenda. And a second. Michael, all in favor? Aye.
Wait
All
a
right.
minute.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I add 12.3 and 12.7 to the agenda? Those are the Mount Gardner letters from the info items. Do I do that now? Just a brief discussion somewhere.
That'll be under the consent agenda. We're not quite there yet.
Okay, thank you.
Are they under the consent agenda there?
The informations are, yes.
Which we'd approve in the consent agenda, so we'd pull them at that point.
Yeah, okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. And okay, so we will move on to public comments. Hope, what do we have? Anything?
I do not have anyone registered at this time for public comment.
All right, thank you for that. And consent agenda. Does anybody have anything that clarification on or that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay, so Ellen, go ahead with what you've got there. 12.5.
No.
Sorry.
3.2.
Oh,
one of
okay,
them.
you're back there. Okay, yeah.
One of them. And also, I guess 3.12, because I'd like to talk about 12.3 and 12.7. 3.12 is info items. And I'd like to talk about 12.3 and 12.7, both Mount Gardner letters.
Okay, we'll add those to items removed from the consent agenda then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got those. Anything else? Okay, approval of the consent agenda as.
Could I just ask,
Yeah.
sorry, I've got I'm using my
Sure, Michael,
electronic
go ahead.
hand.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand there.
No
Yeah.
problem. Could we just pull 3.10?
310, okay.
My numbering is all buggered up
Thank
now.
you.
Is that the minutes, Michael?
Resignations from.
Resignations.
Economic.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take a look this time and I see no hands up, so I'll consider that. Can we approve the consent agenda as amended, please? I'll move that.
Yeah.
And I got Rob. Thank you, Rob. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. Back and forth here. So we're going to move that is the end of the consent agenda and the delegations. Claire Frieder. Is Claire here? Oh, yeah. Great.
Claire's just joining now. Hi, Claire.
Director of Area Services, and Lisa Wilcox, Senior Intergovernmental Policy Advisor, the Islands 2050 project update. Very nice to see you both.
We're just a little bit ahead of schedule. Claire, Lisa's not quite here yet.
Okay. Yeah, where were we? 6:35. Okay. I don't think we should we move ahead? I don't think we can. I don't see anything there that's going to be quick and easy.
I will just text her and see if she can join. now.
Okay, let's see how that goes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Apologize if you can hear my screaming child in the background.
You can't.
That's a pleasure.
Screaming with, it's
Info
happy
items
screaming.
Sue Ellen pulled quick and easy.
Sorry, the what? The info items?
Info items that Sue Ellen pulled, would they be quick and easy?
Probably.
I don't have a problem with that. If you want to go back, Sue Ellen, that first one at 3.2.
No,
Sure.
the 12.3, the info items.
Oh, the info items. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking go right through the whole thing there. Yeah, let's do that. Sue
Oh,
Ellen, are
okay.
you prepared to do that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show that there's lots of support for council's position on Mount Gardner prohibiting motorized vehicles. So there's a letter from the Trail Society BC and another one from the Bowen Island Conservancy, a new group called Bowen Nature and Community, and the Bowen Nature Club. And and because Claire Frater is here from Islands Trust, they had offered to support us if needed, and if we anyway,
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that, and also
All right.
that support hasn't waned. It's still ongoing, and I wanted to just bring it to everybody's attention from deep in the info items that there were two good letters there. Thank you.
Okay, so that'll cover off that 12.3 and 12.7. Thank you for that, Sue Ellen.
Here comes Lisa now, so we'll just give her just a minute
Okay.
to join.
It's almost there.
I think we need to let Lisa know that we're ready for the Islands Trust presentation. So we're
Yeah,
Lisa, we're a little ahead of schedule.
Oh,
that's
wonderful.
probably why she's not coming in.
Yeah.
There she is.
No, I've just been waiting here.
Oh, very nice. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for coming.
Hi, yes, nice to meet you all again. So nice
Yeah.
to see everyone virtually.
So I gave it just a little bit of an introduction there, and I'm going to hand it over to you guys to go ahead with your presentation. And we'll keep the questions to the end. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Anything? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So while Lisa's getting started, Lisa will be sharing her screen and scrolling through the presentation tonight. So we've tried a little bit of a run through virtually, but I hope it's not too bumpy.
Should be
So let's see
fine.
if you can. So is that showing for all of you now?
Yeah, it's great.
Super. So maybe I'll just start with introductions to start us off, if that's all right.
Yeah.
All right. So my name is Claire Frater. I'm the Director of Trust Area Services with Islands Trust. I'm coming to you tonight from Wasanich territory. I live in central Saanich, just outside Victoria. I've worked with the Trust for over 15 years now, and really enjoy and love working to preserve and protect the Trust area. And maybe I'll pass it to Lisa to maybe introduce herself.
Yeah, Chuck Mahath, my name is Lisa Wilcox. I'm a Senior Intergovernmental Policy Advisor here at Islands Trust, and just really grateful to be joining all of you tonight virtually in the territory of the Shuswap, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I'm here coming to you from the Kwanghan territory. So just really pleased to see everyone. And here, I'll just switch to our next slide. So I'll just do a short acknowledgement of the territory, and I'm just really grateful that we are all gathering here together across the beautiful territory of the Shuswap, Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. So as we've been moving forward with our policy statement engagement, we've met so many wonderful people, and it does bring to mind the time we were over with Trust Council and on Bowen, and that was just a really wonderful event. I remember meeting Council Member Allison Morse and also the mayor, and just really lovely connecting with them and talking about the importance of the area and the Preserve and Protect mandate of the Islands Trust. As we've been going through this process of engagement on the policy statement, we've been learning so much from so many people, from constituents, from people all across BC, visitors to the islands. A lot of them are talking about what matters to them, whether it's conservation, protection of the land, stewardship, recreation, engaging with First Nations, and also talking about how to care about their properties and all sorts of different ways of managing and talking about land use and water use planning. So those are some of the key themes that have come forward as we've talked to everyone. And then Claire is just going to speak a little bit about the Islands Trust region and the area that we all know and love.
Thank you, Lisa. So yes, a few of the slides we're using tonight, you might remember as slides we brought to Bowen as part of the open house that we did back in the fall of 2019. And so we're bringing some of them to you again, so they may seem familiar. But this one we just put on just to remind everyone who's possibly watching the meeting of the context of the trust area, that it takes up a good part of the Salish Sea, and that we preserve and protect for the larger region. It's lands and waters of the Salish Sea beyond just islands. And that we come together as a federation of island communities, really as a family of island communities, to work together, share information, and share a common vision for these islands. And it's really done cooperatively, both within the Islands Trust and then with all of the various partners that we work with within First Nations, all levels of government, business, and communities. Oh yeah, and I was going to also mention to you that there are 3 main ways in which we protect the Islands Trust area. So just drawing your attention to what we're now calling place protection planning. This is land use planning, but we're moving towards some new terminology that we're trying to really identify the comprehensive way in which we protect not only the land base for its resources, but also for its comprehensive sense of place and all that that represents. We also work together in regional collaboration. So we work in Secretariat to support various coordination functions. We work collaboratively with all different levels of government, and we advocate. And we hope to support Bowen Island Municipality with your priorities for what you see as needing to be influential for the trust area. And we also have our in-house conservancy, the Islands Trust Conservancy, that now has over 106 protected areas, including a number on Bowen. And in terms of our governance structure, just a quick overview that all the Bowen Island Municipality and all the local trust areas come together to form Trust Council, which then elects an executive committee. And under the Islands Trust Act, we have an Islands Trust Conservancy Board that has 3 elected members and 3 appointed members. And as you all know, Councillor Fast serves on both the executive committee and the Conservancy Board, as well as Trust Council.
Yeah, and it's just been really a highlight of my 2.5 years at the Trust, working with Michael Kale and Sue Ellen Fast on our reconciliation initiatives, and also just getting to know their views and concerns in regards to reconciliation and engagement with First Nations.
And thank you, Lisa. With regard to the policy statement, just a reminder, it includes the guiding principles that guide all of us. So all trustees, all staff, and indeed, hopefully Bowen Island Council as well. And it includes 3 main goals: ecosystem protection, stewardship of resources, and healthy and sustainable communities. And it includes 3 different types of policies. So there's commitments of Trust Council, which are expressions of values, basically, that Council holds. Directives, and these are the ones that all local trust committees and island municipalities pay attention to as you're drafting your official community plan and land use bylaws. And then recommendations, and these are the advocacy policies where we invite others to work with us in cooperation to uphold the Preserve and Protect mandate. And this slide is again from the storyboards, just putting into context the policy statement. For those who aren't familiar with it, that it acts much as the regional growth strategies do for the regional districts. It guides the content of official community plans, also the land use bylaws, and ultimately the form and character of our island communities. So it's a very important document, and it really guides all decision-making within the Islands Trust, and we hope offers up a vision for what we want to do for this special place. In terms of the engagement process we're here to talk to you about tonight, this slide gives you a sense of the time frame, and you'll see at the top of the first colorful line that we've got a "We Are Here" arrow. So essentially, through stage 1, we undertook public engagement, which we'll talk about in a future slide, but lots of out talking with community. We then created a "What We Heard" report to share what all the lessons we had learned from the questions we had asked the public. And those 3 are noted in the top right here. What do you value about the trust area? What concerns do you have for the future of the trust area? And what opportunities do you see to preserve and protect the trust area? So all of that we've now fed in. We've got a great amount of data, and now we're in the next phase of public engagement, where we are asking the public to review a policy directions report. And we put out a survey, which actually closed yesterday, where we had really great response to the directions that we're heading. And from now on, we're going to continue to take input right up until through the process, actually, but right up until first reading particularly. And we're now at the drafting stage, which will be incorporating all the lessons that we've been hearing from community and First Nations. Our ultimate goal is to get to ministerial approval by the summer of 2022. So just overall, the policy statement really guides how we all work together to achieve a preserve and protect vision. So it really influences the official community plan and bylaws for Bowen. And we want to work together to identify your priorities for this document, and where in fact you may be ahead of other local trust committees and we have lessons to learn from you. So I'm hoping we can work together to really craft a vision for the future that can help preserve and protect and responds to the priorities that we're all facing today. And so just as a recap, just to let you know about the What We Heard process, we came to Bowen, had a great open house, and Jillian Nickel, who's our program coordinator, and I had a great time riding the ferry back and forth for 2 days, and we met with a great number of people. And Lisa, if you can move to the next slide, I'll show you the different ways in which we reached out across the trust area. We hosted 24 different events, had open houses, we set up booths at key community locations. We rode BC ferries throughout the trust area, and we also had an online engagement. And you can see on the slide here the summary of that first phase. And then here was the results with the numbers, and you'll see we had really good participation from Bowen Island. Thanks to both our trustees for really pushing word out, and indeed we really appreciated the support of Sophie and other staff at Bowen Island Council or Bowen Island Municipality that have really helped us share our messaging. But yeah, great participation with 36 people coming to the open house, 126 people that came to talk to us on the ferries, and 42 people who participated in the online forum from Bowen. And so moving into the themes of the amendment process, of course, the policy statement covers like a huge gamut of topics and priorities. But for this round, for this first initial update that really the trust has taken on in 20 years, the Trust Council has identified 3 main themes that we're looking at. One is reconciliation, the other is climate action, and the next is affordable housing. So those are the main themes, but we are talking to community and First Nations about all priorities that they have. And we're recording the ones that fall out of scope for this project, so we can keep what we call a topic review inventory for future amendment processes, hoping that this will become a regular and routine activity of keeping the guiding document more current in future years.
And then as part of our reconciliation process, Islands Trust Council passed in March of 2019 a reconciliation declaration, and we are moving forward with a commitment towards the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, also the Provincial Act, DRIPA, which is the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. And we also are guided by the principles set forth by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. And just 2 months ago, Executive Committee passed recommendations that had been advised by UBCM on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Calls for Justice. So those are the guiding principles that move us forward in our reconciliation work. And then as we engage with nations, we know that this is a journey that we're all taking together. And how do we incorporate and ensure that we are doing things in a good way? So that includes looking at stewardship and Indigenous ways of knowing, training staff on cultural safety and reconciliation understanding, access to harvesting, so ensuring that inherent rights are respected, preserving and protecting cultural heritage, and then most importantly, building strong relationships that are built on mutual respect with nations and on building that trust that we need to have as we move forward. And through this process, we've engaged with many nations over the last 2 years, and we're creating both engaging with them with letters and emails, talking to nations and meeting with them. Our CAO and chairperson attended Notsama Tribal Council, and we've also met many times with Penelakut and Comox, also at an interagency level, meeting with the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, and also with municipal affairs and other local governments. So it's really been an exciting 2 years of engagement. And for the first time since with the Islands Trust, we provided capacity funding for nations to review the policy statement. And that capacity funding will continue until March 2021. And as we're doing this parallel process of engaging with nations at the same time that we're engaging with islanders and the general public. So that was a really important part of looking at that policy statement and being able to provide policy staff at the different nations with funding so that they could come back with comments and review the language that was within the policy statement. Claire, did you want to talk about climate change?
I'd be happy to. So as we all know, climate change is a pressing concern, and Islands Trust Council in 2019 declared a climate emergency. And so we are looking at how to integrate the changes in climate and our reactions to them into the policy statement. In the policy directions report that we recently put out, we identified the, what are we calling them? The paradigms and, let me just have a look here, what are we calling them? Paradigms and principles that we're using to guide this work, including things such as using the precautionary principle, for example, or relying on ecosystem-based approaches to climate change adaptation. And also looking at business as usual is not the way in which we want to work going forward. So we're looking at it through that lens, and we're also identifying some policy goals that will guide the way in which we draft the new policy statement. So some of those include things like safeguarding freshwater availability, protecting biodiversity, protecting shorelines, and mitigating wildfire risk. Just a few of the ones that are going to be guiding the way in which we draft this document. It's certainly been a dominant theme that we've been hearing from the public is concerns around what the future holds for these islands and how fragile and vulnerable they are to climate changes. And finally, the third theme that we're focusing on is affordable housing. Really looking at how do we plan for housing for the future of these islands to respond to some of the changes that we're seeing in the world. So really, how do we provide housing that meets the needs of islanders and residents and all community members in a way in which respects the freshwater scarcity that we have on these islands, responds to the desire and demand for vacation rentals, also looks at the way in which we put housing on the landscape and the impact that it can have on species and ecosystems at risk, and then also considering the demographics of these islands and how there might be a need to help people age in place. So with those themes, we're really working at balancing various values and looking at how we can modernize the document and make it more responsive to some of the needs that we're seeing in the community. And finally, our last slide here, we're just wanting to give you a recap of next steps for the process. We're going to continue to speak with First Nations throughout the entire process. We have a virtual open house we're about to start advertising that's coming up on March 2nd, where community members can come and speak to us about their interests and concerns and can ask questions of our various representatives. We're also planning a special purpose Trust Council discussion, a full day on March 9th for Trust Council to talk about its values and priorities for the amendment process, its vision for the future, and the way in which it wants to balance the various elements of the policy statement, as for example, housing and ecosystem needs and so on. And so that should be a really interesting talk, I think, that will set us up for the future. Following that, we are then moving into the drafting stage. So we are going to be putting pen to paper and taking all the input that's been received, and we'll start drafting a draft for first reading. And we're hoping, fingers crossed, we can get to that by May. And then following that, there'll be a formal referral of the draft bylaw sent to over 100 agencies and First Nations, and that will include a formal referral to Bowen Island Municipal Council. We are then going to take all of the feedback that we receive from all of those agencies and First Nations and feed it into a second draft that will go to Trust Council sometime in the winter of 2022. All of that said, we are hoping to have it completed, as I said earlier, by summer of 2022. One of the things I'm hoping to do, councillors, is write to you maybe tomorrow with a few questions that we've put to the other trustees about their values for the region and for your island that we can feed into the Trust Council meeting discussion. So you can look for that email probably tomorrow. Trustee Fast and Trustee Kale have already had an opportunity to respond. So with that, I think Lisa and I are very happy to answer your questions and find out what your priorities are for the policy statement and any desires you might have for the process moving forward.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Claire and Lisa. That was it's very thorough, and that's great initiative going forward. I mean, fantastic work. So I see Allison's hand up there. Allison.
Hi, Claire and Lisa. Just a question. The readings process isn't like a bylaw, a land use bylaw, so it's not a public hearing that there's no actual public hearing?
No, there is no public, it is a bylaw of council, but under the Islands Trust Act, there is no public hearing process.
Okay, so people can talk about it all the way through the process and there's not an issue that way. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Maureen. Muted.
Sorry about that. I was saying welcome.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. The first one, and this has actually never crossed my mind before, and it probably ought to have. Do each of the individual islands have their own OCPs?
I can take that one. So each local trust area has an OCP, and some of them have two. So there's a total of 20 official community plans in the trust area.
Okay, and do those plans include such things as population projections and GHG targets?
Yes.
And do you have an aggregate statement for the trust as a whole?
In terms of population projections?
Yeah.
No, we haven't put that together. I can give general population numbers as they were in the last census, but we haven't pulled together projections as an aggregate. That is something we could certainly look at doing.
Okay, thank you. And then on the affordable housing front, what has been done, if anything, at the trust level related to Airbnb?
So really each local trust area, the local trust committee determines for itself what bylaws it wants to put in place. So it's quite varied across the trust area. Certainly we'd be happy to compile that if that's of interest and look at the various approaches that have been taken. But really it's quite unique. Every community determines for itself at this stage what is best suited for them.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that, Claire, if there were time and if it was useful. And then just my final question, I'm sort of giving you all the easy ones here. The final question is just about the obstacles that you might see in completing by 2022. What might get in the way?
I think we're really trying to be, I think and hope we're going to have a fairly smooth path. Some of the risks I see would be just an ongoing desire for more and more engagement from community. We're really trying to be as responsive as we can, but that does seem daunting given the resources we have at the trust, trying to work across such a vast geography and so many different islands with different needs. So I would suggest that that's a risk. Of course, maybe I'll look to Lisa. Do you have any? That would be the primary one for me. And of course, it would be on our Trust Council to reach agreement on the various amendments. And again, working with Bowen Island Council to find some agreement as to what the priorities are. And I think the March 9th meeting of Trust Council is going to be important to that, so we can reach early agreement before we start drafting as to where the current values are and where the priorities are. But I'll look to Lisa to add anything that she might think.
Yeah, I think, this is one of the first times that the policy statement has been reviewed by First Nations. All the previous drafts had never been provided to nations through an engagement or consultation process. So I think that this is going to be a really exciting opportunity for the Islands Trust to build that trust and to create a document that's really reflective of the region. And so I'm quite hopeful, and the nations that we're talking to and engaging with are excited about the policy statement and the direction that the Islands Trust is taking.
And if I recall, there is something like 27 nations involved, is that correct?
33 nations.
33,
Yeah.
I underestimate.
And if I could just add to that, one of the things that I see that's lovely is there's so much commonality. So, as communities, we all hold so many things in common and as commonly shared values. So I think there's going to be a lot of alignment, I would suggest.
Okay, and then just a final question. Does the policy statement explicitly address the funding formula for the requisitions, or is that dealt with elsewhere?
That is dealt with exclusively in the Islands Trust Act. So the policy statement would have no reference to that at all.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your answers.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, Gary.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah. So thanks, Claire, Lisa. Great report. It's good to hear what you guys are doing over there. You asked sort of what are some big upcoming issues, and I think one of my big ones is just population growth across the islands, and us taking a bit more of a proactive approach versus being reactionary to it, and especially around affordability as well, how that impacts affordability. And Bowen is a bit unique because we're part of Metro Vancouver, and Metro just keeps growing and growing. What can you see the role of the Islands Trust playing in helping us determine what is a healthy community size, and what are some tools and tactics or steps we should be taking to ensure that we do remain a rural, sustainable island versus just become urban sprawl?
Well, that's certainly a big question. I'll try and answer that in broad strokes.
Yeah.
So generally, it would be setting policy direction that is rooted in the Preserve and Protect mandate. So taking a good look at this document and trying to identify the values that we want to preserve into the future and the landscapes that we all love, and trying to set the policy direction such that it helps us achieve that vision. I would say it also needs to recognize changes in climate, which we're looking at, particularly around water. I would say and wildfire risk are going to be two of the ones where we want to look at, and species at risk, particularly because unlike on a continent, species only have so far to migrate on an island. So we really do need to make sure that there's appropriate corridors and intact ecosystems for that to happen. I would also think that there's things we're doing outside the policy statement, which I think would be happy to chat with you in more depth at the joint meeting that's coming up. But things like undertaking freshwater sustainability strategy that the Trust is doing, I think will really help inform some of Bowen's decision making, and just providing some of those tools and some of the ecosystem mapping that we've done. All of those products in and around that support the policy statement, I think will also be very assistive. It's a big question. Am I hitting the mark? Is there any refinement in that answer I can offer? And I think Lisa likely has something to offer as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, Claire, and this is obviously an ongoing conversation, and it's something that I just think we need to get ahead of, and a lot of rural communities haven't, and especially with the development pressure right now, it's something I think that's going to be coming to the fore more and more. So I just want to make sure that Islands Trust, has a very active program or way of looking at that issue and dealing with it as the population starts to create these pressures on rural communities like ours.
Yes, I see Lisa's turned her mic off. I'll perhaps let her answer, then I might just add a little bit more.
I think one of the key things and themes that we're finding is that in order to conserve areas and to create really good solid policy around logging and other challenges that islands might face means engaging with nations and bringing that together so that we're all cooperatively working together and having that interagency cooperation. I don't think that any government at this time can kind of do these things on their own. And I think that I remember when I was working with Squamish Nation, the concerns for Bowen around forestry were also the concerns for the Squamish Nation. And that was also true with conserving the area of Ferry Fen. So these are really key things that when we all work together, we can create really positive, exciting outcomes on the islands. So I see that cooperation between all levels of government and working together is really helpful.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, if nobody has their hand up here, we'll just we'll move along. But thank you.
I was a little slow, Gary.
Sorry?
I was a little slow in getting the hand up.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead then, Allison.
Claire, Maureen had two questions, and the second one had to do with monitoring GHG emissions, which I think would be relevant to climate actions in the policy statement.
Yes. So I'm certainly had to take that, and I'm sorry I didn't mention that in my first answer. So as you may know, all local governments and local trust committees, and indeed Bowen, have had to set targets as required by the province in our official community plans. Unfortunately, the province hasn't provided the data required for small, really sufficiently for small communities to measure emissions trends over time. We are currently looking at partnerships within the trust area, and particularly with some nonprofits, to look at how we might do emissions monitoring into the future. It's too expensive for the trust. We've sort of been investigating, and it seems just too expensive for the trust to take it on its own. And we just don't have access to the right metrics that make sense and produce like reliable data. So we're looking at options, but currently for the policy statement, we're simply having to look at it from a principles perspective, and then using some of the data in terms of adaptation and projections that are available from the regional districts throughout the region. And Metro Vancouver and Capital Regional District being some of the leaders in providing really good data that we can lean into. Is that sufficiently helpful?
That's good, thank you.
Okay.
Super. Thank you for that. Anyway, thank you for your great presentation and your update. And I guess we'll be talking in a couple of weeks.
That sounds great, and I look forward to sending some emails tomorrow.
Good. Thanks for coming by.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, so we'll move on to section 6, and that is the bylaws. So 6.1 is the 2021 5-year financial plan bylaw number 533/2021. Raj Air, Chief Financial Officer, and dated January 31st, 2021. Okay, Raj, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening.
Ben.
I'm just going to share my screen here. Bear with me for just a moment as I get set up. Share. Slideshow. Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. This presentation is on the 5-year financial plan bylaw for the years 2021 to 2025. And just as a couple of introductory notes, this year's budget process and public consultation has been quite different from previous years. There was much more extensive staff participation and engagement in the building of the budget. And the public engagement and consultation with the LACs was also much more detailed than has been in the previous few years. Essentially, the 5-year financial plan includes the revenues and expenditures for the operating and capital budgets for the general fund, which includes planning, engineering, operations, legislative services, parks and environment, fire and emergency services, finance, and corporate services. I may have missed a couple, but generally the operations of the municipal hall. It also includes the operating and capital budgets of all water systems. We have 7 on the island. the Snug Cove sewer utility system, and for the library. So in terms of the budget process itself, it was developed within the framework provided by Bowen Island Municipalities Guiding Principles for Planning and Decision Making. The budget started off with staff work on developing the capital and operating budgets. The budget pressures identified through this process were reviewed by the Finance and Advisory Committee in November. The budgets for the water systems were reviewed with all the local area committees for each water system. And in December 2020, the budget process and pressures were reviewed with council at a council workshop before going out to public consultation and the engagement process. The budget materials were posted on Citizen Lab and available for the public from mid-December onwards. And public comments, the public could post comments online in Citizen Lab or send emails to staff or council if they so wished on the budget. A virtual open house was held via Zoom in mid-January, which brings us to today, essentially council consideration of the 5-year financial plan bylaw. The initial budget for 2021 took into consideration, this is a slide you've seen before, but it took into consideration the resources that are required to sustainably deliver the level of services expected or for the most part currently being provided. And I would like to pause and elaborate on that point. The initial budget identified a need for additional the big need was in human resources here. Municipalities provide services, and the largest resource used to provide services is people. At present, staff are working extremely hard and long hours to provide the best service they possibly can to the community. And just to give you some examples, Aoife in our finance department is in the office every morning at 7:30 and doesn't leave until 5. Then when she goes home after she puts the kids to bed, she logs in again just to stay caught up on our workload. Open administration works long hours to ensure that staff reports and minutes are timely and in order, and that the front office administration staff is functioning efficiently. Jan and Emergency Services works far more hours than are budgeted for and to ensure that safety plans and emergency procedures are in place to minimize exposure to safety and risks. Patrick and his team in engineering, parks, utilities, and roads have far higher demands on their time than they are able to reasonably address in a given workday. And Daniel and his team are in the same situation as is Parks. And I myself have been working extremely long hours. I probably work an average of 10 to 11 hours a day just to get all the reports and information done for council. The point I'm trying to make here is this is not sustainable in the long run, and people are going to burn out. We're going to end up losing staff to other places if we don't have the resources to do the job we want to do, need to do. The resources that were identified in the first budget were not nice to haves or a wish list, as I've heard it referred to as well. It represents the resources required to deliver the expected level of services reflected by the ambitions of council and the community. So the 5-year budget being, we also recognize that receiving all of those resources is challenging. It represents a 15.3% tax rate increase. So we came forward with a budget, which in the opinion of staff is really, it represents the essential bare bone needs for the municipality. It recognizes the pandemic's financial impact on local property owners, and it focuses on maintaining core municipal services. So the tax levy increase for 2021 of 379 is comprised, you've seen this before, but I'm going to go over it again, is comprised of $114,000 provision to increase the contribution to the capital renewal and replacement reserves. This reserve is used to maintain and replace assets owned by the municipality. It includes $114,000 increase for inflationary impacts for supply, services, and contract and professional services and insurance costs. It includes $102,000 provision for cost of living adjustment to wages and benefits costs. $54,000 funding for a part-time HR support person, and to increase the budget provision for a bylaws position by 0.2 FTE. That change took place in 2020, and we're looking for the funding to support it. It also includes a provision for a $50,000 a year contribution to a reserve, which would be used to fund operating projects and council strategic initiatives. There is currently no funding available to fund these types of projects. So after taking into consideration all of the new anticipated non-taxation revenue and expenditures for 2021, additions to the tax levy revenue of $379,200 are required to balance the budget. So we're looking for an additional $379,200 in the tax levy. That would have about $164 impact on the average assessed value of a home on Bowen for 2021. And then I'm just going to jump to the next slide. Sorry, these are iterations from my previous presentation, which were just emphasizing the reductions that took place in comparison to the originally requested resources. So essentially, in terms of what that means for the community, the property taxes for the average house of Bowen assessed at $1,221,000 will increase by 6.6% for 2021. These figures are based on 2021 property assessment value and represent the municipality's portion only. They do not include basically regional or provincial taxes where we collect taxes on behalf of other taxing authorities. In terms of, again, looking at the impact on individual homes within the municipality, the average assessed home of $1,221,000, as I mentioned earlier, will see $164 increase. That being said, 2/3 of the homes on Bowen fall under the assessed value of $1,221,000. So those homes will see an increase of less than $164 a year. Then there's 261 homes that are assessed between 1.2 million and 1.5 million. So those homes will see an annual increase in their taxes below $202 a year. And then we have 367 homes which fall between an assessed value of 1.5 and 2.5 million. And you can see from this diagram that the impact on a house that is assessed at 2.5 million is anticipated to be about $335 a year. So you'll have 367 homes where the impact will be less than $335 a year. And then we have 133 homes or properties that are assessed above $2.5 million. So the impact on those homes will be in excess of $335 a year. In terms of providing some regional context here, and I'm talking in whole dollars here. For 2021, the city of Vancouver, I mean, I know it's not comparable to Bowen, but it just provides context. They're looking for $40 million, and they've approved a 5% tax rate increase, which will generate them over $40 million additional revenue from taxation. Richmond has approved, I believe, in the neighborhood of 5% as well, and that's going to generate about $13 million in tax dollars. Burnaby is proposing about 3%. West Vancouver is proposing 2% for their, 3% for their asset levy and 2% for inflation, roughly. And 1% in West Vancouver is $1 million. The district in North Vancouver has been charging 1% for increasing their contribution to asset reserves. So they're proposing 1% for contribution to their asset reserves and 2% for inflation. And it just kind of gives you an idea in terms of dollars. Squamish, for example, is proposing a 2-point-something% increase, which is equivalent to $800,000. And Bowen Island is proposing 6.6%, which is equivalent to, $379,200. And just to make and put it into context and serve in terms of percentages, you can see that Bowen's percentage increase is much higher, but they earn essentially the amount of dollars that are coming in are far lower. So, and there's a number of reasons for that. I mean, one of the reasons is actually I'm just going to let you look at this slide for a few minutes, and I've just provided some dollars to provide context in terms of what those increases mean. So when you look at this, look at Squamish as an example, they are looking at a roughly just under 3% increase, which will generate $2 million in taxation revenue for the municipality. Now, if we jump forward, one of the reasons why some of these other municipalities can also implement lower tax rate increases than Bowen is non-taxation revenue. So when you take a look at new construction revenue, and I'm going to stick with the Squamish example, Squamish is proposing a tax rate increase in the 3% neighborhood, but they also have $1.2 million in non-taxation revenue in 2021 in comparison to Bowen's $50,000. And then what I've done is used a 2% assumption for the other municipalities because I didn't know what their non-construction revenue is. So if you used an estimate of 2%, you could anticipate that, for example, Vancouver will have $16 million in additional revenue come on board, whereas Richmond, I mean, when you take a look at West Vancouver, you're talking again, over, sorry, I haven't got my numbers in front of me here, but close to $1 million in any event, in comparison to the $50,000 on Bowen. The point I'm trying to make is our non-taxation, non-construction revenue is next to nothing in comparison to what other municipalities are able to generate in non-construction revenue to keep their tax levies lower than Bowen Islands. And in terms of so I talked about the pressures for 2021. I've summarized in this graph what the tax levy increase drivers are for the outer years in the financial plan. So for example, for all of the years, we are anticipating a 2% increase in our tax levy increase for asset reserves. And then essentially our tax levy increase to cover off inflation in operations and debt servicing takes basically the increase up to 4.6% in 2021, 3.3% in 2022, and 2.7% 2023, and 2% in 2024. So the outer year driver expenditures are essentially, as I'd mentioned up above, the infrastructure renewal and replacement funding deficit, inflation, which is assumed at 2%, and the debt servicing for the fire hall and the community center. The interest starts coming into play in 2023, and then the servicing of the principal starts to come into effect in 2024. Other pressures that we're seeing that are included and provided for in the Schedule A that you received included infrastructure renewal and replacement. That includes replacement of our facilities such as the Works Yard, the Snug Cove capacity upgrade requirements are covered off. Pressures that are being experienced in the water systems, replacement of infrastructure. There's significant infrastructure replacement required in Cove Bay in 2024 and 25. All of those items are accounted for in the 5-year financial plan. For many of them, funding needs to be worked out. We're not entirely sure where the funding is going to come from. For example, for the Snug Cove sewer capacity upgrades, that's $8 million we need to spend over the next 5 years. Right now, I've made the assumption it'll come from grants. We've got $1.5 million required in infrastructure upgrades for the Cove Bay water treatment plant in 2020, in each of 2024 and 2025. The reserves are inadequate to address that. I've assumed for now, for the purpose of the financial plan, that long-term borrowing will need to be used for that infrastructure replacement and renewal. Another pressure that's addressed is funding for operating projects. We currently do not have an identified source of funding for operating projects in the budget. Essentially, I've held the level at $50,000 in the budget, but that may need to be increased in outer years. That was operations, and now I'm going to jump over to the capital program and the provisions that are included in the financial plan bylaw for capital. So essentially, our capital for 2021, we have about $12 million of capital included in the financial plan bylaw. 9.5 million of that is in the general fund, 2.1 in water systems, and then I've separated out the Snug Cove sewer here for the $400,000 for the capacity upgrade study. And essentially, most of the general fund capital improvement in 2021-22 relates to the large, I mean, we'll go through some of the bigger projects in a couple of slides down the road, but for now, it's the fire hall, the community center, significant replacements of culverts in 2021. 2022, for example, includes, again, significant culvert replacements, the continued construction of the community center. It also includes the on-island composter. So quite a few works anticipated in the next 5 years, and details on those are available and will be published in the budget book that we put out in a couple of weeks. But I'll highlight the 2021 projects a couple of slides down. So in terms of a breakdown of the capital program for the general fund, I'm going to focus on 2021 here. We've got 5.4 million in facilities, most of that being, again, the fire hall, and we're planning on getting work started on the community center. Transportation infrastructure is 2.9 million. That includes basically upgrades on roads, culvert replacements that are required. The multi-use path is included in there as well. And basically the last couple of phases of the multi-use path, which were presented to council at the last council meeting, have been incorporated into the financial plan bylaw here. And we've got grounds and parks projects of $75,000, a number of small projects adding up to the 75, and equipment and information technology projects of $1,015,000. The big item included in there is the fire truck that is being replaced in 2021. So essentially, quite a bit of capital works in the next couple of years included in the financial plan. And you've seen this slide before. Here is a slide that represents the large projects that are included, or significant projects that are included in the 2021 plan. We've got the fire hall replacement, the community center, the multi-use, all three phases of the multi-use path, culvert replacements and repairs, annual road rehabilitation program, and drainage improvements at Hikers Trail Road. We've got the fire engine replacement for $640,000. And then we've got the wastewater treatment plant upgrade for $400,000 included in this year. That's the majority of the larger projects that we are going to be working on in 2021. In terms of where the funding for those is coming from, essentially $9 million in projects 2021, 3.6 will come from debt. 300,000 of that is the fire hall, 640,000 is equipment borrowing proposed for the fire truck. Essentially, we'll come back to council for a equipment borrowing resolution, so that we plan to go to the Municipal Finance Authority to borrow over 5 years, and then we'll pay that back through the Capital Renewal and Replacement Fund over 5 years. We won't increase the tax rate to repay that borrowing back. Essentially, we've got grant funding of 2,721,600 and reserves, a draw on reserves of almost 2.6 million, and 982,000 is carry forward funding for projects that were approved last year, and basically the available budget for those. The big piece of the 982 is the multi-use path. We've carried forward about roughly $750,000 for the multi-use path from the previous years to this year. In terms of the water systems, budget pressures in the water systems include essentially required increases in provisions for contributions to reserves. For the most part, it's the same story. Reserve balances are not sufficient to address the infrastructure renewal needs coming down the road in the next few years. We have aging infrastructure, varying degrees of quality, and we're going to have significant replacement coming on board in the next few years. Again, we have basically the water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant operator position was incorporated into the budgets, which increased operating costs. And then we have debt servicing costs coming on board for the Cove Bay water treatment plant in 2020, on both the servicing of internal debt, which is to be repaid over 10 years, and the MFA debt, which is to be repaid over 30 years. So what we've got here is a slide. I know lots of numbers, everybody, but essentially this slide here is showing the essentially the proposed budget revenue for each water system. And essentially what we're focusing on here is what the proposed water rates will be for 2021 over the 2020 rates. So on average, we are looking at 20% rates in most systems, with Hood Point being the exception. Their reserve balances are in relatively good health in comparison to the other systems. And so they're seeing basically rate increases of about 10% in comparison to the other water systems. Cove Bay, we're not seeing a rate increase because we are proposing to introduce a parcel tax to service the debt. And so we'll leave the rate flat, and a parcel tax will be applied both in the spirit of transparency and ensuring that we collect the revenue required to service the debt over the upcoming years. Almost all of the water systems have gone through their budgets and have recommendations to council to approve what was proposed in the operating budget and the rate increases for their water systems, recognizing that almost all of the increase, with the exception of Cove Bay, is going to increase contribution to their reserve balances. I've just provided a detailed graph for Eagle Cliff because they have quite a different billing structure in comparison to the other water systems. So to generate the revenue required to meet their operating costs, we've proposed increases in essentially areas where consumption is a little bit higher, giving a break to those people who consume less water to recover their operating costs. And we're proposing an increase in their parcel tax, which is designed, they actually have a parcel tax in Eagle Cliff that is dedicated to cover contribution to reserves. It hasn't increased since 2008. It's been the same since 2008. So we're proposing that that parcel tax be increased to 370, and that proposal had the support of the Eagle Cliff LAC as well. Parcel taxes that are being proposed for Cove Bay are essentially $176 per year to service the MFA debt, which is about 2.68 million over 30 years, and that $176 will be applied to, or will come forward to council with a bylaw, which will have the mechanisms on which that parcel tax will be applied. And essentially, we're looking at also servicing the internal borrowing from the Land Opportunity Fund so that it's repaid back to the general fund within 10 years. We borrowed about $1.1 million from the Land Opportunity Fund to address the increase in the costs in the water treatment plant that we fell short of funding for close to when we were issuing the tender. In terms of, again, the outlook of the Snug Cove sewer, essentially we have a $400,000 expenditure in the 2021 budget, which is being funded out of the general fund. We also have work being done on the sanitary sewer connection for the library, which needs to be done because right now their septic system is at the site of the fire hall. And essentially there is $8.5 million of additional expenditures anticipated between 2022 to 2025 for the upgrade of the wastewater treatment plant to address the capacity issues there, which I talked about earlier. We'll need to figure out what the funding strategy for that is going to be for those years. We don't have an answer at this point. And then there are additional Snug Cove sewage main upgrades that were identified in the budget of $450,000 in the outer years as well. And so in terms of, that's kind of most of my presentation. So to recap, essentially we're looking for an additional tax levy of $379,000. Being driven by an increase in the contribution to asset reserves, contribution to a reserve for operating projects, that was a $50,000 that I spoke of, a cost of living adjustment for staff and staff salaries and wages, and the funding of a 0.5 FTE for an HR coordinator position and for 0.2 FTE increase that took place in 2020 for a bylaws officer position. And essentially what that means is a property tax impact of $164 a year for the average assessed property on Bowen, which is assessed at $1,221,000, which also translates to $14 a month. And the recommendation from staff is that bylaw 533 2021, which is cited as the Bowen Island Municipality 2021 5-year financial plan bylaw number 533 2021, be read a first, second, and third time this evening. And I'm sure, I mean, there's a lot of information that I've tried to put together in a one-page document and provide to council as information rather than data in multiple endless schedules in an effort not to get council lost in the details. So I am happy to open the floor up to questions from council members at this point.
Thank you very much, Raj, for that presentation. Yeah, you know, it certainly couldn't be better. We have a lot of balls in the air.
Oh,
Sorry?
yeah, certainly. Sorry.
Yeah. We've got a lot of going on and our asset management and these sort of things. And it's not, I like your comments on the staff levels. I don't think that there certainly isn't an issue there. And it's, you know, unfortunately it's the cost of doing business. And, you know, I would like to see it lower. Everybody would like to see it lower, but I like that we have everything on the table. And we've certainly uncovered a lot of issues on the island that need to be attended to, and unfortunately we have to deal with them at this time. Anyway, I'm going to start with, I'll take a order here. Rob, you go first.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Thanks, Raj, for the report. Like Gary, I mean, I don't think any of us want to see a tax increase above the cost of living. So, I sort of worked it out for my house, and it's an extra day's work for me. So I just want to recognize that it is a significant increase, and I know a lot of council had a lot of thought about that. I do think we need to recognize that 2% is going into capital replacement fund, which is basically a savings for us, a savings account that we use down the road. So I feel good about that. And also, it's a 5-year plan that we'll probably have to be readjusting it. I mean, Raj talked a lot about some of this funding being dependent on grants, and if we don't get those grants, we're going to have to be nimble. And this every year we'll revisit the plan, and we can make changes as we go. Just some general thoughts and concerns, bigger picture. One is I agree with Gary that I think we are very lean on staff right now. And a lot of times, it's penny rich, pound foolish on that, where if you don't have proper supports, it makes the whole system less efficient. Especially, I want to recognize some of the funding that staff have gotten, for instance, for the Cross Island Pathway, where it's almost 75% from outside of the municipality funding. So, that's money we wouldn't have had if we didn't have staff in place to do that work in the background. So I just want to recognize that, and I support that. Couple of areas of concern, and I've brought this up in the past. One is around fire services. We are going really heavy on a lot of capital projects right now. I'm not very comfortable with getting a fire truck at this time, but it's there. I just want us to be really conscious of how that impacts our ongoing costs for running our fire services, because we also don't have a very clear picture of operating costs, for instance, for the fire hall, and what it would cost if we did expand the service. So that's a concern I have, and I think we'll have to really keep an eye on that over the years. And I look forward with a new fire chief, having a consistent person there that will get looked at. The other area is roads, and I think all Boweners have seen the roads get pretty rough in some areas. I got some potholes out front that are pretty big, and I think we really need to make sure that we have enough funding there, because once that system starts deteriorating, it's a lot more expensive to build it up down the road. So that's another area there where I think we may actually need to provide a bit more money moving forward. And then, of course, Raj brought up the sewer system, which that's going to be a big hill to climb, and it'll be interesting to see how we deal with that. So thanks for the report. I will be supporting it moving forward, but I do think we need to keep a tight eye on that, because obviously we can't just continue raising taxes down the road, and we got some major challenges ahead. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Rob. Sue Ellen.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Raj, for your presentation. I really appreciated it being presented like that, rather than millions of rows and columns of figures, which I've seen in some other years. And this is more helpful for me to get my mind around it. That said, I have a question before I have a few more comments. And in general, I'm supporting this whole approach, but my question is about the Cove Bay new parcel tax for the water system. And so I have written down $176 and $193. And does that mean that for a small house, one of those less expensive houses on Bowen that might have 1 or 2 people on a fixed income in it, that they would be paying another $369 a year?
That is a rough calculation at this point, Sue Ellen. What we're doing is we're taking a look. So that number was based on the number of connections that currently exist in Cove Bay. So there's a number of factors that can change that. So one of the things we're looking at is at the most equitable way of applying that. So for example, when we did the public consultation, one of the members of the public had raised the point of equity, that if you base the parcel tax on legal parcels, a property like Belterra would be paying for 30 parcels, whereas a property like the new one that's being constructed on basically lot 2 would pay for 1 connection. So I had actually sought out a legal opinion. Do we have to apply that parcel tax on those legal parcels, or could we apply it on number of units or some other measure? So Patrick, myself, Aoife, and Annette will be working together to find the most equitable way of applying that. Now, there was a suggestion made that it be applied on a volume basis. And I'm not in agreement of applying it based on volume, because that brings into it a risk of element of collecting all of the revenue that's required to service the debt. And when I was at the District of West Vancouver, for example, we were very heavily moving towards a volumetric system to recover costs, and we were always coming up short on basically revenue and couldn't understand why. So there are risks in basing revenue collection on a volumetric based system. And in any event, we've also reached out to provincial officials, and they agree with us that volumetric pricing is great for recovering operating costs, but not necessarily for costs like debt. So parcel tax is a better mechanism for recovering those type of costs. It's just a matter of finding an equitable base on which to apply that. That also being said, if the Cove Bay system is expanded through discussions that we're having with Eagle Cliff, for example, you will add an additional 110 to, that's just including the Eagle Cliff parcels, to those other properties which aren't on the water system. So all of a sudden you'll have a larger base to service that debt. So there is a potential for the per parcel charge to fall in the future. But I don't have that information now, so I can only base it on what is currently in the Cove Bay local area system.
Thank you very much, Raj. That helps it about the equitable base, because I'm looking at our strategic plan, A1, continue to work on making Bowen a welcoming long-term home for people of varying income levels, lifestyles, and age groups. And I just, thinking about people on a fixed income. So I'm really glad you're going to be looking at the equitable base. I do recall a presentation a few years ago, I believe by, well, it doesn't matter which group, but the point was that it was about water conservation. I think some other councillors may have been there, and that conservation pricing, as what they called it, you're calling it volumetric pricing, has a challenge in it, and that some people are really good at it. And once you bring it in, then your revenue starts to fall and you can't maintain the system. So it has to be really carefully done. However, I think that's the way to go, because we also have these things like climate change coming, the threat to whether we longer, drier summers, basically, and the idea of conservation development principles that we're working on. How much water do we have? How many more people households? All these kinds of things I think are significant. So I'm looking forward to see what you come up with in the word equitable base. What did you call it? Base funding?
An equitable base to apply the parcel tax on.
Apply. Okay, thank you. And that's all I have for now. I was going to bring forward a motion suggesting something like that, but hearing that you're already going to do it, that comes in the fourth reading, I gather. When would that be?
So that will come forward as part of, following the approval of the financial plan bylaw. We'll have a number of other bylaws that will come forward to council. We'll have essentially the tax rates bylaw, which will support the revenue that's in the financial plan. Then we'll have all the rates bylaws that will come forward for the rates in the water systems. And we will have these two new bylaws if the financial plan is supported by council. So we'll have a parcel tax bylaw for the parcel tax for the internal debt, and a parcel tax bylaw for the MFA debt. And when those come forward for council consideration, sometime between now and the middle of March to the end of March, we will address the base on which that parcel tax is being applied then.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Hey, thanks, Sue Ellen, and move on, David Hockey.
Great, thank you very much, Gary. And Raj, first of all, I want to thank you and your staff for this work. I think it's a really thorough and comprehensive report. And as Gary said, we've uncovered a lot of issues. And so I feel comfortable that you're looking at how we can figure out our way through these things. I guess the first thing I'm pleased about is that we're actually addressing an array of issues that need to be addressed that have been overlooked in the past. And it's unfortunate that we've got a tax increase that none of us like, but at least we can feel comfortable that we're on a path to dealing with the issues that have to be dealt with. I had a couple of questions. One was the one that Sue Ellen just asked, and on the fairness of the water rates, and you answered it well, I think, Raj, so I'll go past that. The second is on the 5-year, the chart with the 5-year plan and the tax increases, how they're gradually going to go down. And, whenever we look at 5-year plans, we usually see how gradually they go down. And so that's got me worried because, before, when I was running for council, I looked at our 5-year plan and I was pleased to see that the tax rate was going to go down year over year. And of course, we didn't quite get there. So my worry is, and it's what Rob pointed to, is that some of our big capital projects, we haven't figured out how we're going to pay for them yet. And so some of that is going to be debt. And so I'm just wondering, a lot of those big capital expenditures are out, in 2025 sort of thing. But nevertheless, I'm just wondering how confident we are about those tax rates going down and how that could change if we don't get some of these bags of money that we're hoping to find somewhere.
We're going to have to take a look in which strategic direction we're going in and what services we're going to provide in the future. What you have to keep in mind is, remember that 2021 budget has 465,000, I'm going to say, I can't remember what the exact number is, but is in the high 460s of costs that were taken out and not addressed. Okay, all of those FTE requests that were put forward, we haven't included those in the outer year budgets. So given the issues that we are facing at the municipality, we're going to have to take a look at strategically what level of service do we want to provide a continued, what level of service we want to provide, whether we want to provide the resources, whether we are going to adjust the level of service going forward. So those pressures aren't going to go away. They will come back in. So those outer years, all they include is the 2% assumption for essentially for the capital renewal and replacement, a 2% assumption for inflation, and no increase, no other significant increases. They do represent the change that's anticipated as a result of the community center coming on board in 2023. So the information that was reported in the business case for the community center in terms of the additional resources and the additional revenues we'll receive. And the debt servicing and then the replacement of the municipal hall rent with a debt servicing cost. All of those provisions are taken into consideration, but we have not put into consideration those costs that we've deferred and taken out of the budget.
Okay, thanks, Raj. I mean, that worries me and troubles me because when your average citizen, such as me, has a look at the plans, and then you sort of see, okay, 6.6 this year, yeah, but it's going to get better. But we're really not saying it's going to get better. We're saying there's a bunch of things that have to be addressed, and we're going to have to figure out how to do it, when to do it. But it's very unlikely that those numbers will be accurate.
It is a projection looking forward based on the best information that we currently have. And we have not put in a provision for increased level of service where we've just assumed it's business as it is today in those outer years, and then an adjustment for what we know is happening. Essentially, one thing to keep in mind with those increases do take into consideration significant debt servicing costs that will be coming into play in those years. So those are taken into consideration in those outer year increases, whereas this particular year, when we're looking at the general fund, we're not onboarding any significant new debt. However, we are addressing things like the annual requested contribution to that operating reserve to allow strategic initiatives and operating project requests to be entertained and considered by council. At least we'll have a funding source to address those types of things in the future.
Okay, I appreciate your answers. You're absolutely right. Of course, we can't make assumptions about changes when we haven't agreed on any changes. So we can't sort of account for them now. I guess the one last little bit. So we have some debt servicing charges, but for some of those big ones, big costs that we don't have any potential funds for, we're hoping to get grants, but we know it's never mind unlikely. It's more than it's just we're not going to get grants to cover all of those outstanding costs. I'm presuming most of that will be outside of the 5 years, but some of it would be in maybe that last year in terms of debt servicing.
Oh, so most of the debt servicing costs that I've taken into consideration that are in the financial plan are coming on board in 2023 and 2024.
Yeah.
I'm just going to refer to my schedule here. Just you do actually, if you take a look at the Schedule A that was attached to the report, you will see that there's a jump, for example. So the interest starts going up in 2000. So there's a separate line for interest on that schedule in the operating expenses.
Yeah.
There's a separate line for debt principal payments. So the debt principal comes into effect when we convert our temporary debt to long-term debt. I anticipate we'll be doing that near the end of 2023, and essentially we'll be paying principal payments starting in 2024. But we will be incurring interest as we move along, as we draw down on our temporary debt before it gets converted to long-term debt. So you do see, for example, in the interest expense, we have about 131,000 in 2021. It goes up to 200,000 in 2022, and then up to 246 by another 46,000 in 2023. And then it levels out in 2024 to $272,000. And that's taking in the full impact of principal payments and interest payments when we get to 2024. And you'll also see that the principal payments basically max out based on what we have anticipated for debt in 2024 at about $394,000. That's the second to bottom line of the schedule, just above capital expenditures.
Okay, thanks very much, Raj. I will support this and appreciate the work that you've done and the answers that you've given. Thank you very much.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, David. And move on to Maureen.
Thank you, Gary. I think a good financial officer has to demonstrate both skill and art. And I think you've done a really good job of both, Raj. So I appreciate the work that you and your staff have done. You've told a really clear story here that I think is understandable. And I think the public will appreciate that. The only questions that I had to do with the parcel tax, and you addressed those. So I have no questions for you, and I will be voting in support of the resolution.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Michael?
Yes, thank you. Raj, can I just echo what Maureen has said? I thank you from the bottom of my heart for this presentation. Only what you have done is you have put everything on the table. And I think we can all look at one another and say, thank goodness you have done it. It's out there. Everything is out there. I favor the return to dollars over percentages, because if you take the average house or the median house at 1.22 million, what they are paying annually in addition is $164 or $14 a month. Now, embedded in that extra cost is a decision we had to take, which some of us found very difficult, and that was to raise our reserves. Now, if we hadn't raised our reserves, that $164 would go down to $114, or just over under $11 a month. So if we hadn't taken the decision on the reserves, it wouldn't be 164. It would be 114, $50 less. So that was a very hard decision to make, especially as people, when you look at the comments made, they talk about where COVID years, of course, and how difficult things have been for so many people. And yet we knew we could not kick this can any further down the road. And we had to grasp the nettle and build up these reserves. So I'm going to go back to the dollars. That 164 would have been 114. We put in the extra reserve, and I support that. The other increases, honestly, are less significant. The small staff increase, I'd like to address that because people love to throw eggs at us on how many staff we have, et cetera, et cetera. Well, to try and debunk that, this increase of 0.7 FTEs, or one for 0.2 and the other 0.5, this is to get the right people in our organization doing the right things. There is nothing more frustrating than to see people who should be doing certain tasks, frankly, doing their very best, they're giving their all, but doing something that someone else should do both quicker and better so they can get on and bring their expertise to bear. So whilst, I mean, and I'm perhaps one of the most hawkish amongst this group about any form of staff increase, but I will speak in favor of what you've done because I think it is strategic. Furthermore, if we look at our sustainable income, and that is our income, our annual predictable income without grants. So if you like, the income we can rely upon through our taxes and through fines and through the small grant and through all the other things that we issue for people doing building and other things. If you follow that graph, and then you follow the graph over the years of how many people we've had working for us or how many dollars we have spent. And this one, I had me holding my breath because the worst thing we could have found is that we have had some monumental blip in numbers of employees or dollars spent in relationship to our income. And it's not true. We haven't. There has been a remarkable consistency over the last few years, and that continues, much to my relief, because it would be an ugly story if it was the other way around, and it isn't. Furthermore, in terms of widgets produced, our volume at the municipality has increased significantly, and yet the dollars spent on labor has again remained plateaued. So somewhere a lot more is being done by the same amount of people. And whilst we don't measure efficiencies because we may not have the mechanism to do it, what it means is we're not in that ugly, unpleasant situation of overemployment, wasting other people's money, et cetera, et cetera. And we can argue the case that our people have worked valiantly, and we don't have some grisly bloat of people doing nothing and wasting our taxpayers' money. And I think that's hugely, hugely significant. So I absolutely support that. And it's probably a little disingenuous, but all this work, all this effort, and frankly, risk, is to raise an extra, what, 300 and how many dollars?
$379,000.
379? Is that right, Raj?
That's correct.
379,000. Well, again, I am being disingenuous, but I would remind everybody here that we will be collecting over $300,000 and sending it to Victoria to Islands Trust this year. So people might care to give that just a wee little bit of thought And I'm sorry if I've added that in. It's probably for another time and another place. I just couldn't resist the temptation. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Michael. Okay, any further discussion on this? If not, I will read the recommendation is that bylaw number 533/2021, cited as Bowen Island Municipality 2021 5-year financial plan bylaw number 533/2021 be read a first, second, and third time. I will move that. Looking second, thank you, David. I've got you there. And further discussion? If not, I will ask the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and opposed? Councillor Morse in opposition. All right, thank you. That's recorded. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Raj. That was a outstanding presentation. Thank you. And we're going to move on to Council Procedure Bylaw number 529/2020, and that's over to Hope Dallas, Corporate Officer. Hope.
Good evening, everyone. This shouldn't be too long. I'm just bringing the procedure bylaw back. I brought it forward last at the December 14th meeting, so a little while ago, and it received first reading. And at that meeting, there were a few members of council who had some additional changes they would like to see. So I've since incorporated those. Most of them were just sort of clarifications, cleaning up some wording, a few typos. One of the suggested changes was just creating a little bit more flexibility in a couple of the provisions, specifically around the meeting schedule. So it was specifically set out the second and fourth Mondays of each month and set the time at 6:15. So it was suggested that just be deleted altogether because there is a requirement in the community charter that council set its schedule annually, including the dates, time and place. So that's sort of covered off there. So if council, the next council, for instance, wants to change its schedule to weekly at 7 p.m., we wouldn't need a bylaw amendment to do that. And then the more significant change was proposed is just changing the order of proceedings to move items removed from the consent agenda right under after the approval. Currently, it's located at the end of the meeting, and it's just sometimes members of the public come to a meeting for a specific item and they don't realize it's on the consent agenda, and then the consent agenda gets approved and then they're just waiting around, or on the opposite, they're waiting, an item gets pulled and then they have to wait through the entire meeting. So it's just a bit of a, in Metro Vancouver, for example, they do it right after. The item kind of gets dealt with in the order that it's on the agenda, and that seems to work. So that is what's being proposed there. So all the changes are in a track change version. They're pretty minor. Those two are the most significant. So I would just be looking for second and third reading, and then I'll bring it back at the following meeting. Oh, and I should add, Councillor Morse did have some additional suggestions, and they're also quite insignificant, just sort of tidying up and adding a few clarifying phrases. I could go through them now if that is useful, or Councillor Morse, you could speak to them if you'd like.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go to Sue Ellen first, and then Allison will go to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I just had a couple of quick things. I'm in support of this. I think it's it really clarifies things. I like the idea about the consent agenda right after. I think that's easier for the public, and I like the definition of delegations and some of the other things. I saw a couple of little things in here. I'll email them to you. Delegation, or there's a mention of the word Wednesday. You took out the all meetings are going to be on the second and fourth, but just look for the word Wednesday. There's a start of meeting, page 5 of 819. You could strike B that says start the meeting at 6:15 p.m.
Yes, thank you. That was supposed to be strike through.
And my question was, yeah, my main thank you. I'll just leave. I'll send these later if I think they're important. The main one I thought was 5.1 on page 5 of 19. All meetings shall be held at BIM Hall. I'm thinking about COVID and how we're doing this all online. And I saw something in there about electronic meetings. Is there something coming about electronic meetings? Because I understand the province is going to make some changes too.
Right, yes, it is covered off under section 8. Holding of electronic meetings.
Okay. And I just wondered if it would be confusing to the public to say all meetings are held at Municipal Hall, which is what it says.
I can include a
5.1.
reference to section 8, if that's
Perfect.
helpful.
Thank you.
But
That's all. I'm in support.
It does also say, except when council resolves to hold meetings elsewhere.
Sorry, I must have missed that. All right.
Yeah, it does say that. I
In
think,
5.1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It says,
think,
yeah.
Okay, I missed it. Thank you. Oh, yeah. I wonder what version I was looking at. Okay, apologies. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sue Ellen. Allison?
I think maybe, Hope, just for clarity, we should just quickly run through the comments I made. So on 5.2B, Hope's already said in her report indicated she was going to leave that out. But that means C needs to be changed because adjourned at 9:30 p.m. doesn't fit unless you've got a 6:15 start. So I think just say something along the lines of be changed to read, be adjourned after 3 hours and 15 minutes duration unless council resolves to proceed beyond that time. And so that means a meeting that starts at 2 could end at 5:15. A meeting that starts at 6 ends at 9:15 sort of thing. So that fixed that. And then the other was, I would like to talk about delegations going before public comment. 2 reasons. Michael Kale had a question earlier today and that highlighted it. And also just like what happened today, our delegations expect 15 or 20 minutes of public comment, so they're not there and ready to go. Whereas if they're there and ready to go, and then the public can hear the comments. So I think if I'm understanding the Metro, David, they do delegations first and then invited comments is the equivalent of public comments.
You're muted.
Muted, David.
You were muted.
Yeah, sorry, I think everybody answered. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I would just like to suggest that we try delegations first and public comment second for sort of, I can't remember what the issue was that Michael raised this afternoon that made me think it was also supported having.
I'm fine to go either way. I just, when we do have lots of public comments, which we have had in the past, it just means that all of those folks who just want to come to the meeting to say their piece about a specific item or topic, they will then have to wait 15 or 20 minutes for the delegation to do its presentation and then speak. So I kind of like the way it is, but I'm totally open to change.
I remembered what it was. If the people are there and they want to make a comment with respect to what the delegation had said, then they can't do that because they haven't heard the delegation. So
well, in that case, yeah, then that is.
And the BYLAWS Trust does delegations first and general comments second. So I don't know. I'd like to try it with delegations first and then public comment. So I don't know. What does everybody else think?
I guess I tend to agree with what Hope said. When people have comments, generally they've made them ahead of time. They've thought it out. Often they've written them down. And you know, this is a tricky business, speaking out in public for many people. And so they're probably not going to barely aware that the delegation is there. They just want to get up in front, say their thing. Give them the chance to talk right away is, I guess, my view, like Hope said.
Okay, well then I'll give up because I saw Sue Ellen shaking her head too. So I think she wants public comments first and then delegations. So I think we just have to then remind delegations that there may not be any public comments and please be hooked in 15 minutes beforehand.
I do ask delegations to come for 6:15 because we're typically ahead of time. And then the odd time we're behind schedule.
Okay, so in 22.5, because we've added the word generally in front of the definition of public comment, we said generally restricted to agenda items. I think we need to put a line in there that priority will be given to those wanting to speak to items that are on the agenda, because otherwise we could run into the situation where the first 20 speakers take up all the time and the last 10 are the ones that want to talk about agenda items. It's easy because you have to put your topic on the list. So Hope just picks all the people that have picked an agenda item first and then goes to the other ones.
If I think the idea of members of the public also bringing something emerging to the attention of council, or people bringing an idea or an opportunity or invitation to collaborate, all of these or just keeping our finger on the pulse. I think those are all important too. And I don't want to give Hope at the beginning of a meeting more. I think we should just keep it at first come, first serve. Otherwise, we're putting Hope in a position of choosing who gets to speak before other members of the public. And I just think that equitable and simple is the most straightforward and efficient way to do it, so that everybody can have their say.
But if we've got 50 people and there's only 15 minutes, everybody's not going to have their say. So
well, everybody has to have their say. There's no question about that.
So then are we going to provide to extend public comments?
We have done that.
In that circumstance, we certainly could, but I don't see 50 people coming in for public comments.
Well, we've had large numbers sometimes. I was exaggerating for the sake of effect using 50.
Yeah. No, I certainly understand that, but I think if somebody's coming in for a to do a delegation, there's only 20 minutes that we've left there, so I certainly don't have a problem with them coming in 20 minutes a little bit early and just waiting to be ready. I think that's a better situation than.
I think she's talking about public comments.
I'm talking about trying to give priority for public comments. If we had 20 people there wanting to make public comments and 10 of them want to talk about an item that's on the agenda, then they should get to go first. And 10 of them at 3 minutes each is going to take us 30 minutes. And now we've got another 10 people. So,
Councillor Morris, would it be reasonable to include some wording to extend the timing for public comments at the discretion of the mayor, like based on the number of speakers on the list?
Or the discretion of council or something. I mean, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Is everyone okay with that wording?
Yes.
Yeah, and in reality, that's what happens is we do extend it. I mean, the numbers aren't hard and fast. They're if we got public comments and we got 10 people, then sure, why not give them another 5 minutes to make their piece and tell them they got.
Or limit them all to a lesser time too.
Yeah,
well, that's right.
I sometimes like to limit people to, if you could limit your comments to 1 minute, then we can all be heard, and that really helps too. So I think you've done that, Gary, in the past.
Well, I have. It's not usually very successful, however.
we have currently three minutes in.
Yeah. So
we put it in as 1 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can certainly try it the other way around and see if that works a little bit more efficiently. I certainly don't have a problem doing that and then make a decision on which system works better. But there's going to be always a different combination. If we have a lot of public comments, we don't have any, and then we're not going to have the delegation there on time. I think it's important that if the delegation is after the public comments, that they're there at 6:15, and I don't think that's unreasonable to ask them that.
No, agreed.
I'm also fine with leaving the public comments at 3 minutes, whatever you think, Hope. I don't have a strong feeling.
Well, I think she said up to 3 minutes, didn't you, Hope?
It says for a period no longer than.
Yeah, so if we had a lot of people, we could ask that people be short and sweet. there are public speaker teachers that say if you can't say it in 1 minute, then you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, that was the only comments that I had.
Okay. All right. I certainly don't have a problem with anything that helps to streamline or make the process a lot more efficient. So let's leave it like it is for the time being. And we will, where are we here?
Can I make the motion?
Sure, go ahead. I'm just looking for it here.
Okay, that bylaw 529/2020 cited as Bowen Island Municipality Council Procedure Bylaw 529/2020 be read a second and third time.
As amended.
Second that.
Second that to Michael. And any further discussion? If not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Opposition? No, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the temporary borrowing bylaw for the community center project, and that's back to you again, Hope. Thank you, corporate officer.
Thank you. I wrote this report, but Raj definitely had some input. So tonight we have a bylaw for consideration of the first 3 readings, and it is a bylaw required to temporarily borrow funds from MFA for the in preparation for construction of the community center project. So we need to give first 3 readings, and then at the following meeting we'll adopt, and then we need to send a certified copy of the bylaw to MFA, and then they'll prepare some documentation for us, a promissory note, and then we're basically ready to request the funds when we need them, which won't be for a while, but it's good to have this in place for when we're ready. So the temporary borrowing, allows us to draw on the funds as we need them. So the recommendation is that the bylaw 532/2021 be read a first, second, and third time. Very short and sweet, this one.
Very short and sweet, yeah. Okay, any discussion? I got Sue Ellen.
Thank you. I'm in favor of this motion. I know we've done this before for other things. I just wanted to, in case there's people in the public watching, MFA is Municipal Finance Authority, and they're the ones that we borrow from at such a wonderful rate. I just didn't see that in the motion, so I wanted to make sure that was there. Thank you. I'm in favor.
Okay, and Rob, did I see your hand up, or were you just waving there? Okay, thank you. Okay, if that's it, I'm going to move the recommendation, and if there's no further.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Allison. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody there, thank you very much. And here. And we're going to move on to staff reports. Okay, here's a good one. Development potential on Bowen Island. Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development. Dated January 25th, 2021. Thank you, Daniel. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll just load my presentation here. Does that show up okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Excellent. Okay. So I have a report with some attachments to present to you. So to present council with information on development, and what I looked at primarily in these 2 maps in this report is development that may occur on Bowen Island without further council approval. So it's not looking at OCP level development that would happen through rezonings to match OCP levels, or future development potential that people are maybe proposing or working on that have not submitted applications. But this is strictly what would take place on Bowen Island without further council approval. So sort of what development do we have in the books already? To do this, I examined 3 different sources. So I looked at vacant residential properties that could be built on from now. I looked at lots within our standard residential zones, so the rural residential and the settlement residential zones that have potential to be subdivided to create additional lots. And then I looked at some of our comprehensive development zones and what remaining units exist within those zones. And then I wanted to stress that so staff are aware of gaps and omissions in all 3 of these categories. So as such, this report isn't intended to provide high level, like very detailed or it's not intended to provide detailed projections, but it's more the high level information to give you a sense of scope of what is out there. And then the last point just being that development potential doesn't equal a population projection. So there's many elements that would go into doing a population projection, and this is more looking at what units could be developed on Bowen. So looking at the vacant properties, this is a data set that comes from BC Assessment. So when they do their assessments, they flag properties as vacant. So this is from their data release as of January 1st, 2021. But that timing means the data actually dates from July of 2020. So lots that were created since that time are not included in the vacant property lots, or lots that have started under construction since that time would still be flagged as vacant properties. So what staff did is we filtered that data to flag everything that was identified as vacant, and then excluded lots in some of their categories for civic or utility categories. And then I linked it to our existing GIS data and went through and manually excluded lots without residential potential. So BC Assessment had flagged a wide variety of stuff as residential lots that are vacant, but they included municipal parks that we held in fee simple, some strata common properties, some small crown land parcels. Staff then I went through and manually reviewed approximately 50 of the parcels to confirm that they matched the BC Assessment data. But having, after the agenda went up, spotted some cases where this was still inconsistent and updated the map accordingly. So the map identified approximately 300 properties that are residential and that are vacant. So ones that could proceed with building permit applications at this point. We didn't evaluate other aspects of development such as septic potential or access routes or things that may make that residential development not possible. I also didn't consider underdeveloped properties. So there are locations, for example, in Snug Cove in our village commercial zones where denser development is possible. So the existing development could be redeveloped at higher density under the current zoning. And then finally, I provided a breakdown of municipal water systems to assist in aquifer planning that's already underway. So this was the overall legend. So 321 vacant properties, and you can see it broken down there by water system as well. To give an overall sense of where vacant properties exist on Bowen Island. Some may be surprising for some and some fairly apparent. The second one I looked at then was subdivision potential. So I looked at large properties within that rural residential or settlement residential zoning designations. I compared the size of the property with the minimum or the minimum average lot size requirements in the land use bylaw. So and counted the additional lots that would be created. So for example, if the land use bylaw has a 1 hectare minimum lot size, so a 10-acre lot, I would consider that to be 9 additional lots. So you could create 10 lots where there was 1. And I didn't consider other aspects that would be considered at the time of subdivision. So those include access routes, servicing availability, environmental or geotechnical considerations. So, and I can't stress this enough, is that not every lot identified on this map will actually be able to be subdivided. So I really don't want somebody to bring me this map in an application and say, but you said you could subdivide this lot. That's not the case. It's just flagging that the size of the lot is large enough that 2 lots could be created based on the land use bylaw. There are a couple circumstances where I didn't consider, but additional lots could be created. So for example, there are cases where 2 neighboring lots could be combined to create a 3rd lot. So each lot on its own isn't large enough to subdivide, but if the neighbors get together, they can create a 3rd lot out of the 2 lots. There's also examples where if people are willing to create or able to create a community water system, then our land use bylaw allows additional lots to be created. So in some cases, through the creation of a community water system, you could create additional lots. And then finally, I know that I did not identify every settlement residential lot that could be subdivided into 2. But at some point, it was sort of, we've captured the majority of lots. So identified over 200 lots that could be created through subdivision without requiring a rezoning. And then finally, looking at comprehensive development zones. So I reviewed 8 existing comprehensive development zones to identify remaining development within those zones. And then I'll flag too, I flagged things that had active subdivisions underway, but these were active as of that July 1st date of the BC assessment data as well. So We had recent subdivisions completed in December for Arbutus Ridge, for Parkview Slopes, and the Cowan Point. But they don't appear, but I've still marked them as complete because they don't show up as vacant properties in the BC assessment data. So I was trying to capture them in one way. And then in terms of the mapping of the CD zone highlights the entire zone. In many cases, the development is clustered in specific areas in each of the zones. So the mapping will capture things that are slated to be parks, or in the Cowan Point development is actually a golf course, but it's all slated, it's all just flagged as within that CD zone. And then lots in the CD zone that are the parent parcels may also appear on the vacant properties map. So there's some double counting going on because the parent parcels are vacant residential properties, even though they're zoned to be created many more lots, but they're still vacant residential properties. So what I found in these CD zones was that there were 387 remaining dwellings that could be created. Not the outright majority, but the largest number is in the Grafton Lake development, which is still in its first phase. But significant numbers remaining in other zones as well. Next, then we took some look at dwelling types within the zone. So as you might expect, a large focus on detached dwellings, but some zones have a higher number of attached units remaining, especially as you get closer to Snug Cove. So in the CD point, which is the pub development, or in the community lands zoning. And then the other large category that we have is actually, and I'll just go to this pie chart showing it, is that a number of the zones, in particular Grafton Lakes, allows for either detached or attached within the zoning. So when you look at it like this, you say, oh, maybe we'll actually have a lot of attached units being developed, but I would anticipate that the majority of these in the either actually be developed as detached dwellings. So for example, one of the areas in Cowan Point permits either detached or attached, but to date, all the development in that area of the CD zone has been developed as detached dwellings. So then finally, I have this map just showing lots that can be subdivided and CD zones with remaining units left. So recommend that this staff report be referred to the APC and also the Housing Advisory Committee for their information. Then I'm open for any questions, and I'll just stop my sharing.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. That was a lot of work, but I'll tell you, it's very informative. Build out's another interesting part of it, which I guess isn't part of this study, but I'm just looking at the Cowan Point development, and that's been 31 years now, or something like that. And it's only, what, 50% built out, if that, not even 50%. And that could change. So that's a pretty hard thing to get a handle on. But yes, the numbers are very, very well done on that anyway. So I'll go to Maureen. Maureen.
Thank you, Gary. And thank you very much, Daniel. I know how much effort went into pulling together all of this data and all of the cautions all the way through. I think it's enormously valuable for understanding sort of the baseline of what's going on with potential development on this island, and it provides a context for some of the decisions that we might have coming up in the future. The chart that shows, the pie chart that shows the proportions of either detached and attached dwellings, I think it's really illustrative that what is baked in to the land that's already zoned is a direction that's largely replicates what we already have, more detached homes. Granted, there are some attached homes in that chart, but they look like they're probably going to be the minority, as you suggested. Probably those that are either will end up being detached homes. So I'm grateful that you produced this report. I'm very grateful that you produced it in such a short period of time, because the topic of baseline development potential only came up at our in a direct way at our October strategic planning session. So this has been turned around in a couple of months, including a Christmas period, and I think that is really, really commendable. The only suggestion that I would make at this time is that in addition to this being referred to the Advisory Planning Commission and the Housing Advisory Committee, that it also go to the Environment and Climate Action Committee. I think that committee would actually have some constructive feedback, and there are consistently questions that come up in the committee's discussions about maximum build out and how much development the island can sustain and so forth. And I think this would inform the discussion at the committee level. So I'd like to propose that amendment. And that's everything from me. Thank you again.
All right, thanks, Maureen. And over to you, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for that report, Daniel. And I just want to echo something that Maureen brought up, that the speediness of the report. It sort of caught me off guard. I was expecting this a couple of months down the road still. So thanks for putting that together so fast. It's great to see this. And to echo Maureen again, it's good to get a general idea of where we are as a base of potential growth on the island. It's something as a councillor that I'm quite concerned about, that a community just keeps growing without really having a solid feel of where they're growing to or how big they're getting. So I think this will be a piece of the puzzle that will give us a bit of a better idea, especially if we're going to be upzoning properties. I'm thinking the Cape maybe coming down the future, what impact that has on how many people we can sustain on this island, and what the impacts are going to be, and I'm especially thinking of cost around. One of them is the amount of 5,000 people on island, and us taking on a lot of cost on our CMP and police costing if we go above 5,000. So if we do get to that stage, I want it to be a conscious decision we're making as a community, and not sort of, oops, we just went over 5,000. Now we got all these costs that we have to deal with. So I think this report will, gives us one of those pieces that we're going to need to be able to make good, effective decisions, planning decisions moving moving through the future. Anything else I wanted to say? Services, suggestions, and maybe David just left the phone, but the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, would it be worthwhile for them to take a look at this as well? Because a big part of growth is around transportation. I know they talk quite a bit about that. So I'm wondering if it would also be worthwhile, I don't know, David, if you have a comment, of it also going to that committee for some feedback.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. That's an interesting idea because you can really kind of get a sense of the areas by looking at that map as to where we'll see population. So I think that's a good idea. It is, of course, long term, but yeah, no, I agree. Good idea. Thanks, Rob. Yeah.
So maybe I could make that up. Maybe I can add, if people are okay with that, I can add that amendment to Maureen's amendment, which I will support as well. If people are good with that, a friendly amendment on that.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. And over to you, Sue Ellen.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I like those ideas, and I was going to propose also sending it to Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee, because you have to plan ahead for the connectivity of trails, natural areas, and creeks, and all those good things if you want the trail to be there. Otherwise, it's too late afterwards. Mm-hmm. And so the proactive planning. And I agree with Transportation Committee and the Environment and Climate Action as well, especially when it comes to water and having enough water, and also for planning for what we used to call runoff, which we don't want it to run off. We want it to infiltrate, but sometimes that stormwater needs a place to go, and that needs to be thought about sort of ahead of time. I just wanted to mention I was happy to hear that aquifer planning is underway. I know we've talked about it before, but that's great. And that also is partly why I'd like to refer this to the Environment and Climate Action, why I support that. And I think that this whole document is going to be really interesting, useful work when we next update our official community plan, which does consider things like this in terms of sustainability and how many properties can go where. And it has already got them designated there, so that the possibilities of build out and the numbers of build out are in there. So I support referring this to more committees, because it really is Island's future, and being proactive. Let's get the word out. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sue Ellen. And Maureen.
I wonder if I could sort of belabor something. Daniel, could you bring up the breakdown by housing type slide that you included for the CD zones from your presentation?
This one?
The one before. Yeah. Because I think, you know, as time has gone by, I mean, these CD zones, they stretch back quite a long time, as Gary mentioned. You know, the current point rezoning, I think, is what, 3 councils ago, we might have lost track of just what exactly is proposed to being built in some of them. And in particular, when there are calls from the public, from the community, who are concerned about housing on the island, and there not being enough housing of appropriate types, enough rental housing, or enough small homes, or enough seniors' homes. The major tool that we have as a municipal council is the tool of zoning, in order to make things happen. And there have been decisions made with all of these CD zones to make certain kinds of homes possible for people on island. And the 35 units, for example, under an affordable housing agreement in Grafton Lake, that's huge. And the majority of those are rental. The Arbutus Ridge project, the 14 detached dwellings in Area 2 under the terms of a housing agreement. If I remember correctly, that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, that's special needs housing and seniors housing, and that's already there and zoned. The community lands lot 1 is that's the area next to Belterra that you're talking about there, where there could be small homes that would be more affordable. The pub, you know, we are all familiar with the new pub, but the adjacent apartments that were approved, I think in 2014 or so, 2015, those fall off the radar. The term I've always used for this bigger picture is that there is a hidden housing map on Bowen Island that many people are not aware of. It's all the stuff that has been zoned in the past and is in the wings, and may take a while in some cases to come into fruition and to be available for people. But there have been many decisions made by multiple councils to enable that happening. And that, you know, in many instances, the obstacle to realizing it is private capital or public grants. And we've been getting better and better at attracting both of those. So this is a super valuable slide for me, and the connections between looking at this, and then looking at our housing needs assessment, which back in March of 2020, just before COVID hit, that housing needs assessment was referred out to the Housing Committee and to the Advisory Planning Commission. And we haven't gotten really much in the way back from those two bodies in the way of feedback. So what I'm hoping is that when this goes out, in addition, that it's considered alongside the housing needs assessment, and people start putting things together, and the report that ultimately comes back to council based on this, based on housing needs, will be very helpful in our considerations of any future rezoning decisions that we might make. So you can tell that this really struck a chord with me, and I'm so pleased, and I'm so grateful that council feels that it's going to be of value for it to be sent to all of those different committees, because it is an important report in terms of thinking about the future of the island. So thank you again, Daniel.
Thanks, Maureen, and a very good point. To your point about most of the properties that we've defined here are zoned, and we can't really force them in. Only the ones we could force into a situation for more rental housing or ask for them for more rental housing, they would be coming up in the future. We're sort of committed to what is existing, unfortunately. But a really good point. I think the other thing we have to consider, which is probably even more important than what's available out there, is a holding capacity of the island. And, as far as potable water and that sort of thing. And I think that's, we have to be very conscious of that. There's no question about it. And over to you, Liam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Daniel, for that presentation, and to council for their comments. And I just want to add one more caveat. I appreciate Daniel's caveats, and he and I spoke a lot about them. And just that all that we see here may not ever come to fruition. So just being really conscious that just because it is zoned right, perfect. Sue Ellen just put up her page that says possible future lots. So it's the potential of it, but that there's a high likelihood that not all of it will ever come to fruition in our lifetimes. But just that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, thanks, Liam. Which is exactly right. And if it does happen, it'll happen over many years, albeit you can't go back on a lot of this stuff. So the recommendation is the council refer the staff report development potential on Bowen Island dated January 25th, 2021 to the Advisory Planning Commission, the Housing Advisory Committee.
Sorry, Gary, I'm just going to stop you there.
Yes.
So we've added a few, so it'd be the...
No, I was just going to read them here.
Oh, I just have them in alphabetical order. Go ahead.
Oh, you want them in alphabetical order? I can't do that. The Transportation Advisory Committee, I think, and the Environment and Climate Action Committee. I think those are the four that we sort of identified.
And the Parks and Trails.
Parks and Trails, yeah.
Oh, and Parks and Trails, okay.
Read out her motion.
Sorry?
Should ask Hope to read out what she's going to put in the minutes.
Sure.
The council refer the staff report development potential on Bowen Island dated January 25th, 2021 to the Advisory Planning Commission, Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee, Housing Advisory Committee, Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee, and the Transportation Advisory Committee for information.
I'll move that.
I'll second that. And no further discussion. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Put my on here. Jeez. So the 7.2 is Snug Cove House license to enter and construct, and that's back to you, Daniel Martin, Manager of Planning and Development. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm here again tonight talking about Snug Cove House Society and their proposed development at 1118 Miller Road. So the Snug Cove House Society are proposing a 24-unit senior supportive housing development. And this is the elevation, looking at their north side elevation of their proposed building. So it's being proposed on this lot here, and the north side being this property border that borders with our lot, community lands lot 2. And what they're currently working through in their development proposals is looking at their proposed development in relation to the grade that exists on our lot 2. So if this is their proposed housing development, this red line is showing the natural grade at the property line. So through the subdivision of that Snug Cove House Society subdivision, the grade has been significantly altered and lowered throughout the development in many places. So it results in this imbalance between where Snug Cove House will be developing their building and where then the adjacent land ends up. So you can see it's sort of roughly the 2-story level in some parts of their development. So as part of their design, they have requested us to allow them to lower the grade on the neighboring portion of lot 2 of the community lands. So the area requested is approximately 1,600 square feet or 150 square meters in area. And the grade would be lowered by an average of 3 meters. So one of the things staff considered when they first brought this to us is that where they're proposing to lower it has long been identified as a potential access route to lot 2. Not the most economical route necessarily to build an access route in, but the sort of the logical legal access route that the municipality controls for lot 2. So we have previously had work done by Urban Systems identifying how such a road would be constructed off of Miller to access the back of lot 2. So it's shown here, and then this is showing it's like 15% grade road that cuts through up into lot 2. And so what we asked Snug Cove House to show is where that road would be in relation to their proposed regrading, thinking that if it would assist in that regrading, that it would be beneficial, and if it was sort of working counter to what a potential road access would look like, that it wasn't of benefit. So this is what the applicant has provided, showing the proposed regrading area happening roughly in that back half of the lot in relation to the future road shown on the plan. So this is the Snug Cove House building, showing the 3 stories level from here. You can see the existing grade in red, their proposed regrading here, and then you can see all the way further down where a future road access level would have to be lowered to. So you can see they're taking some of the grade off, but if we ever wanted to actually construct a road in, it would be a significant further regrading. So in asking our legal counsel for how such an agreement would work, they identified a license to enter and construct. So it would be an agreement between Snug Cove House and the municipality as the owner of lot 2. The agreement would permit the works to take place for a set period of time. Would require Snug Cove House to undergo the necessary registered professionals to design and complete the work and ensure it. And then crucially would not transfer any long-term rights of the land to Snug Cove House. It would be permission to do the work to lower the grade, but then the right to develop that land would remain with the municipality in any way that council would decide in the future. So what staff are looking for at this point is that council direction to prepare the license to enter and construct for a portion of community lands lot 2, and then we would be bringing that agreement back to council for their endorsement. But as this is something we haven't really done before, we thought we would bring this initially to council for discussion and direction before actually preparing the necessary agreements. Stop there for any questions.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Okay, I've got Allison.
I guess my question has to do with who's paying for the legal counsel to prepare this agreement. I think it should be our legal counsel, but I don't think we should necessarily be paying for it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
And
That's
how much
something
are we looking at?
Yeah, that's something I could discuss with the applicant, and if that's council's direction, then we could make sure that would be a component of.
I support that.
Yeah, 100%. Is that it, Allison?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to David.
Thank you, Gary. What about, I mean, this will involve a bunch of tree removal and blasting. What about some sort of rehab for the land? You know, landscaping, planting, something, so it's just not a bunch of broken rock?
Yeah, I think the agreement would have to specify, yeah, sort of what the ground, what the land, what like the finished condition is.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel.
Okay, thanks, David. And on to Sue Ellen.
Thank you. Yes, one of my questions was the same as David Hawking's. The second one, I didn't expect the idea of what looks like a win-win situation to me, leave the costs for that onto a charity who've been working for more than 20 years to try and create this senior supported housing, which we need so badly on Bowen, and which has been identified by the community for many years, including through the past official community planning project. The need, well, that was affordable, but still, it's part of the same. So people don't have to leave the island. And so I think for what could be a win-win situation in the long run, I support the municipality paying for our legal advice to support meeting this community need through this registered charity. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sue Ellen. Back to Allison. Muted.
Sorry, Allison, you're still muted.
Most of the work is going to be done on their own land, correct? Very little of it is infringing into the road allowance, if I understood your maps correctly.
Of the regrading work?
Yeah.
Most of what they're proposing would be on lot 2. Given that it's already, like the Stud Cove House lot has already been regraded, and the remaining, yeah, the work would largely, like this specific work would largely be on lot 2.
Oh, I totally misunderstood the map then.
Put it back up, please.
Yeah.
Allison, I think what we're seeing is in that first map, which showed the footprint, was the regrading is largely on our property on lot 2, but I think, yeah, that's the map there, but it encroaches on the road area only a little bit.
Oh, so where's the property line?
So the property line is this dashed line.
Oh, I thought the property line was the solid
Gotcha.
line up road 2. Okay.
That's the road edge.
Okay. So is there a really benefit to us then about having the regrading on the part that isn't where the road would be? Or does it enable us to do switchbacks, which means we don't want them to do much to, you know, a bit of a curve or something to lower the downhill run? Is it not a straight run?
I think the assumption is to do this road, you'd be taking out grade on both sides anyways, or at least on this side, rather than end up with Snug Cove House lower, this like straight one rock outcrop and then a road. It's probably not safe at that point or stable to leave the rock in between.
Yeah. And okay, so I misunderstood the map then. So there is benefit to us from this. And I guess my other question was, if there's material being removed, I don't know with our 2 different building projects going on timeline, and if they could use the material. Thinking of the fire hall and community center.
The community center, if the material was of a quality that was good for reuse, the community center would be a welcome site. Right.
Maybe, yeah. Okay, so nobody has an issue as far as the trees are concerned in their.
Can I just say?
I see your hand. Sorry.
Before we go ahead, I guess, you know, are we talking about a $2,000 legal bill or a $5,000 legal bill? But, you know, the last lawyer I was dealing with, they were $600 an hour.
No, I agree.
So, you know, if we just need to know what kind of costs we're getting into.
Well, that would certainly be nice. I appreciate what Sue Ellen's saying about, you know, helping them to move ahead and all that stuff, but I don't really want to incur a $20,000 legal bill on that, so I don't know how we can define that. I was just going to mention the trees, then I'll go to you, Maureen. That's all been logged and it's all second growth. It's all alders and stuff. And so there's nothing really significant there that, in my mind anyway, but, and they're only probably 8 inches, 6 to 8 inches. And over to you, Maureen.
I think it's pretty clear that the regrading would substantially increase the livability of Snug Cove House on that first and second floor, because otherwise they're essentially basement suites looking into a bunch of gravel and dirt. So not very appealing at all. So I certainly support what they're proposing to do here. As far as the legal fee is concerned, I wonder if there might be a compromise where it's 50-50. With the Miller Road sewer expansion, there was a contribution both on the part of the municipality and on the part of Snug Cove House. It sounds as though Snug Cove House is happy to pay the bill at the moment. So it would be a gesture to offer a 50-50 split. And that would also be an incentive to keep the lawyer's bill reasonable.
I like that idea, Maureen. That's great. Is that it, Maureen? Okay, anybody else have any comments here? I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, so Hope, have you got something there that you've put together with that, with the 50-50 in there? Is everybody okay with that 50-50?
Yep.
All right, it looks like,
it.
Okay, thank
So
you.
yeah, they're just, I just have, after the main motion, that council
Yes.
direct staff to invoice Snug Cove House for 50% of the legal costs required for the preparation and execution of the license to enter and construct.
That sounds fabulous. All right, does anybody need to read that recommendation? And I will move the recommendation as
It's not staff that's going to prepare the license. They're going to have legal counsel prepare it, right?
There'll be consultation with legal counsel.
I got the feeling from Daniel's presentation that they were going to get legal counsel to do it.
Daniel?
So I have from our legal counsel like a draft template document that I would start to populate and then have Chris do the meaningful clauses.
So maybe we need to say direct staff to draft a license to enter and construct for review by.
I think we're splitting hairs here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think obviously Chris is going to be involved with it. So to prepare the license to enter and construct. That's what I would assume. So I'm okay with the way it is with that addition at the end. Anybody second that?
Second.
Would you like to read it? I think people should be able to read it.
I can read it. So the council directs staff to prepare a license to enter and construct for Snug Cove House Society for a portion of the community lands lot 2, legally described as lot B, district lot 490, group 1, New Westminster District Plan LMP 44342, except part in plans BCP 9282 and plan EPP 68283 PID 024 656 411 as described in the January 25th, 2021 staff report to council, and that council direct staff to invoice Snug Cove House Society for 50% of the legal costs required for the preparation and execution of the license to enter and construct.
Okay, I've moved that. We have a second.
Yep. Councilor Hawking seconded.
Okay, David, thank you. And any further discussion? Allison, I see your hand up or no? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't take it down.
Okay, thank you. And so I'll ask the question on favor. I think we got them all. I think that's it, eh? Oh, did you get them all?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's great. And so we're going to move on to 7.3, which is the Fire Hall and Emergency Operations Center project update. Hope Dallas, Corporate Officer, and Aaron Hannon, Fire Chief. All
Thank
right.
you. So Aaron and I are here tonight just to give a quick update on a few items. So for starters, since engaging Liberty in late December, they've been working to finalize specs and construction documents for submitting the building permit. And they prepared a preliminary schedule for construction, and it's included in the attachment, and it contemplates mobilizing in the next week or so, and then construction to follow in the following weeks once permit and site works have begun. And so we're just wanted to share that for information. And then there's just two other items that have come to the surface that we wanted to share with council. With the site works potentially starting in the next couple weeks, it was brought to our attention that we have to check the heron nesting policy to make sure there's no herons within the area due for construction. And we've confirmed with Bonnie, our manager of environment and parks planning, that the proposed development on the firehouse site is outside of the 200-meter nesting area or known nesting area. So prior to any works commencing, the project team will confirm with Bonnie that there are no reported nests within the area. And if there is, then there's some mitigating measures we'll need to put in place. And then the second item is the removal of the trees that are on the site. So there's two trees, as I'm sure you know, the one large Douglas fir, and then there's a smaller cedar as well, located near the rear of the site. It's been determined through site planning that both trees are required to be removed to accommodate the site prep and construction. As well, the trees do pose a safety risk being so close to the buildings, as well as they're not in alignment with the fire smart principles. So a qualified arborist will be engaged to fall the trees and do the cleanup. And then the tree, it's proposed that the tree will remain on site until we're able to determine a use for it, whether that's reusing it for something in the building or another project, maybe the community center perhaps, or selling it, or there's many options we haven't come to a conclusion on yet, but we're happy to bring back options for council at a later date. So all the tree work will occur outside of the bird nesting season, which is usually March 1st to August 31st. So we're hoping to get that done quite quickly. We also understand there is some sensitivity around the removal of the large Douglas fir. I mean, it is a very beautiful, iconic tree, and so we'll have public notice to let folks know that it will be removed, and just to give the neighbors a heads up, because that will be some loud disturbances in the area just on that day for falling and chipping and all that kind of work. So this report is just intended for information, and if council has any questions, Aaron and I are happy to attempt to answer them. Aaron, do you have anything to add?
No, nothing to add. Yeah, I think that explains it all quite well.
Great. Nice to be moving ahead. Sue Ellen.
Thank you for the update. How was it determined that the two big trees needed to be removed? And who determined it?
So Liberty Contract Management, the company building the building, basically said it would be a safety hazard with the distance of the trees to the building. They were just too close to the building for the foundation. Like we're going to be digging out, we'll be digging out the roots, so it would make the tree unsafe, and as well as to leave it, it's so close that that it would just be unsafe to have it that close to the building.
It's also a like a lone standing tree, which is also not very safe. It is a massive tree, and it is a very healthy tree. But in the event of a wind event, having a brand new post-disaster emergency facility, it would not be great if that tree took it out in one foul swoop.
Thank you. No, I understood that part. It was the part about determining that it would be unsafe, and I was curious about that. So Liberty, the construction company, has determined that. Okay, and my other question is just about heron nesting. There's another part of the policy about loud noises and blasting and things like that. even without the, like so far, partly because of COVID, there haven't been a lot of volunteers out and about. We have no, just for those who might not know, it's me who keeps the records and has for 20 years about the herons. And so we haven't got any, so far it's looking good. We haven't got any reports of herons being anywhere near the current known nests. There may be other ones, but I just wanted for the members of the public who we know somebody put those signs up there. And so there is concern, and so that's great. You've answered my questions. And I hope to be able to help if there's anything I can do with heron reporting. If I hear of anything, I'll be in touch with Bon. Right?
Thanks, I appreciate that. And we're classified ourselves as the moderate disturbance. There will, just so you're aware, there is no blasting required.
All right, Maureen. Thanks, Joanne.
There was a notice that came out earlier today from the municipality saying that there might be some tree clearing work being done for the health center building. Are they? Is that work being coordinated with the potential fire hall work?
Yes, I'm in contact with Tim and have been coordinating the notice going out for the work that they're doing. So it is a temporary closure. They need to get in between that bird nesting season. So they're sort of under the wire just as we are.
Right.
And so they're just getting that initial work done, and then the lot will reopen until they're more in a position to start construction.
Okay. So
that, yes, we are constantly in coordination with the health center group and BIRCH with lot planning, and we're in the process of drafting agreement for the shared works that need to happen, the access and easement for drainage and stormwater.
Okay, that's going to put a lot of Miller Road into action. So that the notice to the public, super important.
Yes, we are very much aware. Thank you. We're working on developing a communications plan for all the different milestones, and we'll try to coordinate that with BIRCH and health center as well. Mainly health center because they're moving along.
Thank you very much.
It's going to be a pretty busy place for a little while there. Thank you, Maureen. And any further questions on this? If not, the recommendation is that council receive the Fire Hall and Emergency Operations Center project update report dated January 25th, 2021 for information. I'll move that.
Second.
Well, thank you, Allison. And since there's no further discussion, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Right, great. Thank you. Nice to see this really going to happen. Really going to happen.
Can't wait.
So the correspondence 8.1, Bowen Island Community Foundation letter of thanks and request for continued partnership. Is anybody going to speak to that?
Yeah, I guess I can, or Liam,
Sure.
but so we have two letters from the Bowen Island Community Foundation. The first one is for the Neighborhood Small Grants Fund. And so in 2020, BIM entered into a MOU with the foundation to partner with them as their community charitable partner to receive grant funds and then redistribute them. I believe it was for the Vancouver Foundation was involved in this one. No, that was the next one. So anyhow, they're looking to continue the partnership into 2021, and they are also asking for the matching funds again this year, and that is in the amount of $1,500. So I know we just gave readings to the budget. I'd have to defer to our CFO for a funding source. But the program was very successful, and it's all contained in their letter that's included in the agenda. So that's the first bit.
Okay.
Eva, do you have any, Raj or Eva, if you're in the around?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me? I don't have my camera.
No,
I kind of lost the picture. But we basically will be able to fund that. We haven't got the $1,500 partnership provision in the budget for next year. However, that is the type of thing that we would be able to fund out of the council strategic reserves fund through that $50,000 contribution that goes in there, because this isn't an ongoing request for funding. It's a 1-year request, so we can build that funding provision in should council choose to approve that.
Okay, thank you, Raj. Any further discussion on this? If not, I guess I'll read this recommendation. Whereas Bowen Island Municipality has received a request from the Bowen Island Community Foundation, the foundation, for continued partnership with Bowen Island Municipality, BIM, to act as a community charitable partner to receive and disperse grant funds on behalf of the foundation for its Neighborhood Small Grants Fund program for the year 2021. And whereas the municipality continues to support the work of the foundation in providing grant funding for neighborhoods to share skills and resources, forming relationships that build resilience and self-sufficiency in local communities. Therefore, it is resolved that the municipality enter into an extended memorandum of understanding to act as a community charitable partner for the receipt of grant funds from the Bowen Island Community Foundation and the Vancouver Foundation, and disperse the grant funds based on recommendations from Neighborhood Grants Committee. And further, it be resolved that council support the program by providing matching funding in the amount of $1,500 to be included in the 2021 budget. I'll move that. Second, David, thank you. And any further discussion? No, all in favor?
Aye.
Allison, sorry.
I just had a curiosity question. The report won't the letter won't download in my agenda notes.
Okay.
Did we contribute money to the program last time around?
I think
Yeah, we
did,
contributed
yes.
1,500.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So all in favor? Aye. Okay, it looks like we got the works. Thank you.
And the second letter is a request with regards to the Youth at Risk program that was started in 2019. And so that is BIM acting as a charitable partner with the foundation to receive grant funds and disperse them to the Caring Circle, who then uses the funds to for sessions with, they coordinate the sessions with the youth at risk. There's no money involved. This is just a redispersing of the funds from the foundation to the Caring Circle.
Okay.
I'll move that, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Second, please. There you go, Michael. And a further discussion. Anybody have anything they want to talk about here? I think it's a really worthwhile fund. It was brought to light, I guess, on what's his name died there in the bike accident. And it is an extremely worthwhile fund. Anyway, no further discussion. I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye. Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. So we'll move on to the reports of committees, commissions. So we go first to the minutes of the Environment and Climate Action Advisory Committee, meeting held January the 18th, 2021. And I guess, David, do you want to take that? Or not?
I needed to unmute, sorry. Sure, I'll take that. Maureen can add anything. Pretty straightforward. There's been quite a bit of discussion around the importance of having high quality compost that we could trust, that comes out of our new facility that we're hoping to get, that we've applied for funding for. And one of the important things would be that we don't have any unwanted chemicals that are going into that facility, because they're on our materials, on the materials that are being composted. And there are other municipalities who have bylaws such as this. And so that's why, rather than sort of getting into details of it in that meeting, the meeting recommended that council ask staff to have a look at what other communities are doing and bring a recommendation to council on that. Maureen, anything to add? Do I have it right, roughly?
Okay, Allison?
I'm just curious as to why the committee isn't doing the research. They can go to Civic Info and look, and we heard how busy staff is. So, and it seems to me that is a project the committee could undertake.
The committee could do that, sure. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward to go and have a look at what, say, Richmond has done. But the committee felt that, it's not its position to make a very specific recommendation, that staff would have a better sense of, how things could be implemented and what council would want to support. But if you want the committee to do it, they'd be happy to do that, I'm sure.
I think staff would actually like to take on this task, in part because they're so enthusiastic about moving forward with the composting facility. And also they are more accustomed to bringing brief reports back to council for consideration. My worry about giving a task like this to the committee itself is they might knock themselves out doing something very exhaustive before it finally surfaces and comes back to council.
Yeah, to your point, Maureen, I think the lines of communication are probably better through staff to looking at other municipalities and that sort of thing. They'd probably get more traction than they would from committee members. Sue Ellen?
Yeah, thank you for this. I think this is a good motion. I might suggest that it might have the words "and bring back to council" at the end, if you wouldn't mind, just to make it really clear. I like the suggestion about, especially for compost, but also for wildlife and wild plants and birds and
humans.
Humans, the kinds of decisions we've had around the artificial turf field, right? We wanted to make it safe to play. And so these kinds of, this is a great start. I have to admit, I'm in the house of the chair of that committee, and I heard that the committee members had already conducted research and brought options to that meeting. And I think it's appropriate for staff to sort through what'll work best for Bowen Island and what will be efficient for the staff and council, and also how it will best fit with that composting project that they're also writing the grant for, or wherever they're at the moment. So I'm in support, and I would ask you add and bring back to council at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Allison, you got your hand up again or not?
I just wanted to say I'm not against having the pesticide bylaw, but I definitely don't think we should be directing staff to do that without getting input from our CAO as to whether staff has the time with all the other things they have to do. And so I'm going to vote against the motion because I think the committee should be doing the research and providing the sample bylaws to staff to copy.
Well, that might happen too. Liam, do you have any comments on this?
I'm
a little concerned about staff time because it could be, I don't know what it looks like. Is it 10 hours of staff time or is it 40 hours of staff time? I don't know.
It would definitely be more than 10 hours of staff time, and it's not on anybody's work plan. And it really would look at doing research of existing practices by other municipalities. I know in the Capital Regional District, there are a couple of municipalities that have these types of bylaws in place. And, I don't know exactly how much time it would be, but it definitely would be a concerted effort for staff to do it right, because staff always are wanting to be very comprehensive and thorough. So,
okay,
I think if it were a staff working with the committee, and the committee were able to provide, if they've already done a bunch of research, then perhaps that's a collaborative effort.
Maureen, any comments on that? Has any work been done by the committee?
I think there's been some work done.
Yeah.
I think the main point of bringing this recommendation to council was that the committee and David and I realized that we weren't in a position to direct staff, and staff was looking for the okay to proceed.
Yeah, that's,
Gary, just one other thought here.
yeah, go ahead,
I
David.
mean, it'd be nice to have for various reasons, it'd be nice to have a bylaw like this yesterday, but we're not going to have a compost facility for what, a year and a half?
Yeah.
So, you know, this is not an emergency. We have some time for staff to do this. Members of the committee, I mean, I, for instance, know some folks in Richmond who have done this work. I mean, it'd be pretty, but our staff already know this too. Our staff already know to look at Richmond. But I guess Liam's right. Staff, the way we do things, we'll do it carefully and do it well, and we'd look at a bunch of examples, and some time would go into it.
I just wonder, it's just maybe the way it's written, if we could just not water it down, but if we could just soften it a bit. And but I guess there's no way to do that. You either ask them to do it or not. I'd like to put it on a list, you know, and they can do it. Liam?
Well, I guess my sense is that it would be Bonnie and Carla perhaps doing the work.
That's right.
And I know how much work they currently have on their plate. Bonnie in particular, and there's much work that needs to be done around what I would say would maybe be more pressing for the immediate term. Around the use of public spaces, and that's squarely in Bonnie's wheelhouse to work with Daniel on that. So I do think this is a type of bylaw that resonates strongly with me, and the need, and I support the need for it. But if I were to have it on a prioritization list right now, I would put it lower on Bonnie's list. And I feel badly because Bonnie's not here to be able to speak for that, but just knowing what she has on the plate, on her plate. Right
Well, I'm just wondering if we could water it down, say the council directs staff to consider different, but that's the same thing. You know, I don't think there's any way around it. Okay, I'm going to go to David first.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of taking it back to the committee and having us, we could produce, say, 3 options. Look at, you know, look at 3 different communities, you know, somewhere, I'm not going to name them because I don't know. That would be, you know, things that would include, you know, rodenticides, for instance. That's at the, you know, getting quite broad, covering a lot of stuff, and ones that will be sort of more minimum. And we could bring that back and send that to staff so that we do have some options, so that then staff could then use their judgment as to what would be the best to fit in, as Maureen was saying, with the kinds of work that we do and their ability to manage it and so on.
Yeah, I would certainly prefer that, so they don't have to go in, when it does go to staff, that they don't have to go in cold turkey and start from scratch, eh?
Yeah, I mean, like Saanich has had one in place for 10 years at least.
Yeah, and Richmond as well. Yeah, maybe not.
Oh, Quitlam. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Sue Ellen, you're on the...
Thank you. It's interesting you mentioned rodenticides, because I didn't see them fitting under cosmetic pesticide ban. So I was wondering if they're in there. I think there should be something in there about rodenticides, because they're it's a poison basically, and it can work its way up the food chain and start killing your owls and things like that. So I think it needs to be considered. I don't think we've got a timeline on this, so it could be left up to Liam and Bonnie and to figure out the work plan on it and how it best fits with the composting facility as you get closer. There's going to need to be some education. And Bonnie, I think it's also efficient because Bonnie's the enforcement officer, and she'll want to have a bylaw in place that has the education and is able to be enforced, so that in that way it's efficient. But I think it's fine the way it is with the bring it to back to council, because it doesn't have a time on it. And I like the idea of the committee supporting. That's great. Now there's lots of municipalities out there that have these. Selena Robinson, Minister Selena Robinson is one of those. Coquitlam.
Okay, thank you. Allison, here's your hand up, or?
Well, I was thinking about some wording here, and I'll just throw it out.
Okay.
So that council supports the ECAC conducting research and exploring options for establishing pesticide ban on Bowen Island with the assistance of staff.
Okay.
Liam, how does that sound?
To bring back to council.
To bring back, okay.
And you're leaving cosmetic out of there, or?
And I like that there's no date. So
Yeah.
then we can, that is helpful.
I think you just missed one part of that, Councillor Morris, that council supports the ECAC conducting research, and then there was something in there I
And
missed.
exploring options,
Oh, and exploring options for establishing.
changing the, putting the ing on the end of them.
And leaving out the word cosmetic is what I heard, which I approve of.
Establishing a pesticide ban on Bowen Island.
I'll second that, Gary.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I think the term cosmetic was intentional.
Well, it definitely was.
Because I don't think I
agree it's because intentional. I just am confused about the rodenticide part. I think it should include rodenticides.
Well, maybe
I think it does.
Other pesticides ban?
Sorry, Allison, I couldn't hear that. What was that?
Say cosmetic and other pesticides ban?
I wonder if we could just simply take this back to the committee.
Yeah.
And have
Well, that's even better.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
take it back to the committee, and David and I can pass on the gist of this discussion and come up with another recommendation or another way of achieving the same goal. Because I'm not liking the direction of the recommendation.
That's right. Okay.
I think the committee can just do a little bit more work.
Yeah.
We need a motion to refer it back to committee then?
Yeah, motion to refer back.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. And okay, thanks, Rob. All in favor? Aye.
And I guess what's important that Maureen and I will take back to the committee is what we're hearing from council is general support for the idea.
Absolutely.
The issue is the time that staff would take. I just want to make sure that everybody's fine so we can say that. Yeah.
100%, David. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, so we're going to move on to new business. CAO update. Liam Edwards, Chief Administrative Officer. Over to you, Liam.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one item I wanted to discuss, and it was brought up briefly from Hope in her update around the fire hall, and it's the issue of parking in the cove. A favorite topic of many. But with the exciting advancement of the healthcare center moving forward with prepping their site, it does bring to light the need for what is our plan going forward with parking in the cove. And I understand that it's been brought to council in the past before I was here, but that there's been some solutions, but they've only been temporary in nature. So we had a temporary solution with Area 1 on Lot 2, but that is now gone, and we've got an exciting building being built there. We did manage to secure the Renison lot beside the general store, and so we provide free public parking there, and that's an excellent solution, but we don't have certainty for long term with that. We do a year-by-year lease agreement for that. And so really what I'm suggesting here, and maybe it's a motion on the fly because it really just came to light with the health center project advancing forward just very recently, that council directs staff to explore alternative parking options in the cove, and to bring that back to council for consideration.
Can I suggest an amendment that council directs staff to review past proposals for
Yeah,
parking
here.
improvements in the code and identified new ideas, because we have done this on a number of
Numerous occasions, yeah.
and identified we could do this, we could do that, and there have been a few ideas that I think we thought were viable that where we were told no, this won't be viable. I'm thinking in particular about the possibility of angle parking on Dorman Road, where we were told that wasn't an option. Maybe it isn't an option, but it might be worth revisiting some of these ideas that surfaced previously. So I just want to make sure that all the prior effort that was put into thinking through some stuff here isn't ignored.
Thanks, Maureen. That's good points. And I'm going to go to Allison first and then Sue Ellen.
I was going to also make that point that Maureen made. I've got a whole binder that's got parking in the cove plans and reports and all that stuff, which I'm quite happy to lend you. And I guess my other was to look at those, and then maybe we have a discussion, because we are having a strategic planning session. And if my memory serves me correctly, that parking lot that's up there by the RCMP station was never intended to be permanent.
No.
So, unfortunately, my son just took a parking meter back into town. So otherwise, we could have started charging for parking.
Yeah, here. That it, Allison? Thank you. Sue Ellen?
Yes, thank you. I hear you, but I also think we need to look at what need is there for parking. When I go to the Cove these days, these COVID days, there are times when it's busy, but there's other times when there is plenty of parking. And so I just would like to get a little sense of how much this is needed at this point. And then I also like Councillor Morse's suggestion about considering charging for parking, because it's having free parking in the Cove is not the ideal way to encourage people to use alternative transportation or to support the moves we need for climate action. And if we want to look at options, I think charging for parking might be something that we could do both on the Renison lot and at the, or more on the Renison lot, I guess, and at the temporary lot. Thank you. Incentives for getting out of cars. Thank you.
Yeah, Rob?
Yeah, thanks. And, echoing a lot of what Sue Ellen had to say, and also that this is a bigger picture with our transportation plan, but also managing of cars coming into the Cove instead of just building more, looking for more parking spots to get more people sitting. So I'm a bit concerned of looking at it just as a one-off, as one area to look at versus looking at it as a whole, which, as a couple of people have mentioned, we've already been doing for a while, and taking up more staff time on that. And also, we had a staff report not too long ago with parking capacity in the Cove that showed there was significant amount of capacity there. So I'm not very keen on putting more staff time into that at this time. So I probably won't be keen on supporting a motion like that.
Okay, Michael, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, before we get into a debate of parking, no parking, why can't we just stay to what we agreed initially and come up with a plan? With using what we had before was an excellent idea. Believe it or not, summer is coming and there will be an increase in rubber tire traffic. Please, let's not be without a plan. So why don't we just keep maybe some personal opinions on cars and transport on one side. Why don't we leave it to the team to come up with something that makes sense? And if it's based on some good ideas in the past, let's utilize that and let the plan come forward, and then we can see what's out there. But we are going to need parking. Summer is going to be here, and if people can't travel elsewhere, Bowen is going to be in their sights. So let's not be unprepared, please.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know how much with the medical center going ahead, the medical center. I don't know how much of that parking lot they're going to take. I suspect they're probably going to take half of it anyway, Liam. That would be my thinking. So probably about 12 slots or something like that. But it's not going to get any better as usual in the Cove. I mean, we took that parking lot on lot 2 already. So now we're going to take another half of that parking lot. The one that we have in the woods there, which was temporary anyway. So it's not a bad deal if they just dust off those parking. I think the staff could dust off those parking things and just have a look at them again.
Talk to Judy.
Do we want a recommendation?
We have one.
We have one.
Semi-drafted here.
Okay, super.
So that council directs staff to review past proposals and identify new options for parking in Snug Cove and report back to council at a future meeting.
Yeah, I will
I'll move.
second.
Okay, there. We're loading up staff again. Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Let's just see where it goes. Thank you. And okay, I'll ask a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
And opposed, Rob, and who else?
Me.
Sue Ellen?
Sue
Okay,
Ellen.
thank you. I forget about that sometimes. All right, so Liam, is that it for your report here?
Yeah, that's it. And I appreciate the input on that. And we really were looking at it, staff trying to be proactive on the issue at hand. So, but yeah, I don't have any other update to bring forward at this time.
Yeah, I think in reality, if we dust off that old report, I think it's not going to change too much from, I don't think there's going to, all the work was done. I think it's just a matter of refreshing it and looking at it again. So it shouldn't be too much work. Committee review work plan for approval. Councillor Michael Kale and Councillor Maureen Nicholson. It's all yours.
We need a motion to extend the meeting. It's now 9:30.
Have we got that in the bylaws? Or is that just,
Okay, that's in our existing bylaw.
no, is it?
I don't know if we've ever done a motion to extend, but in my time here, they almost always go beyond 9:30.
We used to do them quite regularly.
Right.
I usually just, by consensus, everyone agrees.
By consensus, yeah.
We're still.
Ah,
Yeah, everybody's still here.
I'm
Wait
going
till
to,
the new bylaws
I'm going to go fill my water cup though.
Okay,
I'll be right back.
we'll allow you to do that. Okay, so go ahead, Michael and Maureen.
Shall I start, Michael, or?
Yes, Maureen, I was going to say we didn't rehearse a sort of
No, we
show
didn't.
here, so please kick it off.
Okay, so this report, this work plan, follows up on some of the discussion that we had at our last strategic planning session in October to conduct a review of the municipal committees to identify some efficiencies in their operation, to look at their structure, their function, and with the goal essentially of improving their operations. We wanted, there's been some discussion among council about this, and we wanted with this work plan to put it into the record and to get feedback from council on the approach that we're proposing to take, and then to get things underway. So just the purpose is to review the structure and functions of our current committees, to strengthen the relationship between committee work and strategic priorities, to improve the direction provided by council to committees, to help ensure committee members engage in meaningful and impactful volunteer work, to identify efficiencies, as I said, and importantly, to confirm what is actually working well at the moment. As you all know, we have 17 plus committees that are active at the moment, and we also have the water systems and the sewer committee. We're not proposing with this work plan to look at the water systems or sewer, but just to restrict ourselves to the active committees of council. Committee members of the public, council have all at various times in the past expressed concerns about the operations of our committees, and we thought it might be time to just take a slow and respectful look at how things were going. So, Michael, did you want to add anything to the intro?
No, Maureen, thank you. And also what's been in front of council members actually pretty much reflects our first conversation. So in fact, when Maureen and myself went through this work plan, what's in front of you, I think shouldn't have any great surprises. It's pretty much in line with what was actually we first looked at. Obviously, we put a little bit more flesh into it and to give you a good overview of what we're looking at in draft form so far. So, and to get your feedback now.
Yeah, and in order to get to this point, we also, Michael and I met with Hope and with Liam and with Steph to get their suggestions about how to proceed. So the sort of the workflow reflects some of that discussion. So welcome feedback on any aspect of the report that's in front of you. This is the point where we can fine tune, shift gear, whatever's necessary to make this a process that council as a whole is going to be comfortable with. And then when it flows out to the committees, that they are also comfortable with it and understand what the purpose is.
Mm-hmm. So that just quickly before we get to the questions, so it looks like just committee chairs and vice chairs are on your list for comments, and consultation.
For interviews, Gary, but there's a survey of all committee members that is proposed.
All right, okay. David Hawking.
Thank you, Gary. Well, thanks, Maureen and Michael. This is a lot of work, and you're taking on a lot of work. But I'm struggling a little bit as to how it'll all work out. I really like your 6 bullet points under purpose, because what you're saying is that this investigation, what the changes we're looking at are strategic. You're trying to make this our committee work more strategic. In other words, better use of resources, better connected to the work and so on, to the work of council and so on. So I'm not quite sure you'll do these interviews, and then what will you bring back to council? This is actually really hard, I think. I don't know how you're going to do it. But so what will you bring back to council that would be strategic? Would it be input at a workshop sort of thing where you've got some ideas on what could happen, or I really don't know.
Yeah, I think in terms of the flow, we would be getting feedback all through the process. Yeah. So the first step is going to be meeting with the committee chairs and with a set of questions that we'll share with council beforehand. So council can give us some suggestions about whether we're asking the questions of committee chairs that you would want us to. We'll use what they have to say to refine the questions that we ask of the committee members. I think Michael and I had in mind that we would be bringing back a set of recommendations at the to council as a result of this process, and they might be quite specific in terms of the these committees should be merged,
Right.
because they when you look at how they're operating and what matters to them, there's significant overlap, or there might be recommendations around the frequency of meetings. Some committees, the default is if you got a problem, you create a committee and it meets monthly.
Yeah.
That's like totally inefficient as far as use of staff time, community volunteer time. It can lead in some situations to a lot of frustration among volunteers who think they're signing up for one thing and they're actually doing something else. So being more discriminating in meeting schedules, perhaps in memberships, some of those terms of reference for the committees were put in place quite a long time ago and haven't been looked at by council or by the committee in quite a while. So I think I'd love to be more definitive about we will be coming back with this, but I think for this to be a legitimate process, we have to say we don't really know what we'll be coming back with, other than we'll be aiming to pull together a set of recommendations that will mesh with the purposes that we went in with. That's probably the best answer I can give.
That's a pretty good answer. I mean, clearly you've thought about this quite a lot, and I really appreciate that. Two suggestions then. One is that after COVID, things have changed quite a bit in the committees because that automatic monthly meeting, wasn't necessarily happening, and I think that's changed. It's changed things a little bit. So there'll be some comments around that, both good and bad probably, and certainly some good ones, but maybe some not so good ones. Another person, I think you should talk to the committee coordinator. The committee coordinator really has thoughtful thoughts about,
we met with her. That was the pre-meeting when we met with Hope and Liam and Steph.
Yeah.
And she took it to heart. She went away and provided us with 3 pages of notes. And a lot of very useful feedback.
But I think, David, it was very important that she didn't feel this was in any way a criticism directed to her. So we wanted to say that you're very much part of the team looking at this. So, and exactly. Well, we're going to have to wait to hear. I'd rather that our questions to some extent be open-ended, so that the feedback generally will in some way obviously craft our response, rather us going in with preconceived ideas, so that when we do come back with our report recommendations, it is based upon what we hear and not what we thought beforehand.
That's very good. I'm very pleased to hear that you've got that work from Steph. Obviously I'm a committee member, but as a former committee chair of a couple of the committees, Steph does a heck of a lot of work, and she does it really well. And she guides, she makes things move along and makes them more strategic. So I'm glad for that. So thanks for this effort. I really appreciate it, and wish you luck.
Thanks, David. Allison?
Just a few questions. I think we've talked about this for a long time, so I'm glad it got going. Just a couple, I'm not understanding the time column. And I just sort of, like on the first one, you said you pre-meeting with staff. So you met for 1 hour?
Yeah.
But there were 5 people, so it was actually 5 people's time.
Yeah, no, this is not, you can't go through this and come up with a total at the end.
Yeah, so I guess that's, so what, and I don't honestly know how you're going to in 3 hours, the two of you review all the background materials. I think you've underestimated the amount of time, and especially in the conducting the interviews one. And I guess, but I think we need to have a rough idea of how much staff time is going to be required for this. Because we got the lecture this evening about how busy they all are.
Yeah.
So that was a concern I had. And I guess in the purposes, I totally understand what you're trying to do, and I don't have a problem with those as being sort of the outcomes. But I'm wondering why you're not wanting to identify what isn't working well.
We actually would end up doing so over the course of this. I always prefer to say things like to confirm what is working well, and in passing, mention what isn't working, but not to focus on it going out the gate.
Okay, so if things aren't working, they're going to be identified. And on your presentation, June 28th, draft recommendations to council, would that be in a closed committee of the whole? I think it should be.
It may well be. We discussed that, and Alison, I think if you would bear with us, let us see what comes out, whether it is something we feel that's appropriate or not, and maybe we need a little time to come back on that. And I've got a note of just what you said, because obviously we're going to try and make this non-personality orientated. But look, if there are things that need to be said, then we will have to come back with a request to make it a closed meeting. But I think we're just going to have to wait till closer to the day.
And so I guess that's my other point. I don't see in here, I think, anything about interviewing the people that have resigned from committees.
We haven't, we haven't identified that as a step so far. And in part, I think it's because we haven't come to a landing. The time commitment as is with the existing committee chairs is pretty significant for Michael and myself. I think there was an element of, again, let's wait and see. I mean, I think with some committee chairs who have resigned or have left for a variety of reasons may very well reach out to us. I would hope they would if they wanted to, and participate in this. But we have not upfront made the decision to do so. I'd be interested in the rest of council's feedback on that. Is it something?
And I was thinking members that have resigned too. I mean, maybe they could get the survey.
That's possible, yeah.
Yeah, we can also get some guidance from Steph as well. I think she could probably give us some useful pointers, because we're probably talking in effect, what, a small handful, hopefully, a handful of people. It won't be if we're doing this amount of interviews, those ones may be strategically very important. And if it's 3 or 4 or 5 more, well, it's 3 or 4 or 5 more already on a considerable number. But better that for completeness. But thank you for the thought, because we hadn't recorded. I think
my last one was just to remind you about the committee handbook.
Yeah.
So I assumed you knew about, but
yeah, thank you.
Okay, Sue Ellen, you've been waiting patiently there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just, I think this is great. Thank you very much, Michael and Maureen, for taking this on. I think it's a good timing now, 20 years after we've become a municipality. It's time to review the committee structure. I think it's been, as a rural committee with a rural community with tons of community groups, active neighbors and whatever, working together on projects. That's part of the charm of Bowen. Doesn't necessarily need to be reflected, though, in our advisory committees anymore. And I'm not sure about that. But we have, for example, adopted a public participation policy, which we didn't have before. And I think maybe that's one of those structure and functions of the current committees. I think it used to be, anyway, part of it was to gather input and or community engagement, that kind of function. Maybe we don't need that anymore. We've got staff that do that. And I mean, there's another function, coordinate with other island groups. It tends to get good cross-pollination happening, good projects. But it's time to check and do a bit of a review. And now the other things we've got now are plans, parks plan, transportation plan. So we've got things laid out and sort of work plans that go along with those and budgets, which we didn't used to have. And we're getting grants now. You know, we're kind of in a different place, and I think it makes sense to do it. So thank you very much. I think it's good. I like your positive. Because they're volunteers, I don't want to discourage any volunteers. I'm sorry, I've talked too long.
No,
No, not at all.
Your point, Sue Ellen, about not discouraging anybody and particularly taking the time. We always said this will be the time we need, because this is something we have to deal with obvious sensitivity. And you know something, if it overruns, better it overruns with sensitivity than we do something, hit it hard and just to achieve a schedule. So that is, I think, having spoken to Maureen on this one, I think we're together on that score. But thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great work plan. I think there'll probably be some variations as you go through it. There's no question about that. As you feel the temperature in this, and it's going to be all over the wall. It's going to be very interesting. And to David's point, I think it's going to be very complicated. But that's great. Good work, you guys. Really good work.
Make the motion that council direct.
Yes.
Do we want to direct to the council approve councillors, that council approve councillors Caitlin Nicholson proceeding with the committee review work plan as presented at the council meeting of February 8th, 2021.
Okay, I'll second that. And any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Terrific. Good luck with that, you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the Metro Vancouver Director, David Hawking, update to council on Metro Vancouver business.
Thank you, Gary. I've had a few meetings, so I'll spend a little bit of time here. In the regional district, the GBRD meeting last week, there's just like the Islands Trust is reviewing the trust policy statement, the regional district is reviewing its regional growth strategy. So Metro Vancouver 2040 will become Metro Vancouver 2050. So policy reviews come by the board every month or so, and a really interesting one last week, a climate change and natural hazards policy review. And what the elements of this are really quite interesting is that member jurisdictions in their regional context statements, so this isn't what Bowen has to do, but everybody else, Bowen has to be able to have a context statement that says how their OCPs align with the regional growth strategy. So member jurisdictions in their RCS will have to specify how they will meet CO2 targets, carbon dioxide targets, through land use, through transportation, through carbon storage, and through protecting natural areas, and how they will support resilient local food systems. So OCPs will become a much more specific documents about how to solve some of the problems that are before us. So really quite interesting. The federal gas tax funding has to go through Metro Vancouver, and there was funding for 57 battery electric buses for TransLink, and along with the supportive infrastructure to charge them up. One more interesting little thing, and there's a bunch of contracts about using biosolids. And so the biosolids, it's basically using the output of the sewage sewage treatment plants, to use simple terms, and mixing them with wood chips and compost and so on, turning them into soils, and they're using them to reclaim lands all over the place and using them in road various municipal projects where they need soil around landscaping and so on. Anyway, this soil is available free to member municipalities. So I don't know if we knew that we could use that. I've used about 60 yards of it in my yard, and it's quite remarkable stuff. Anyway, it's free for us if we want to use it, but of course, trucking is always an issue that we have to pay for. Then let's see. two other committees. One a little interesting thing, the Electoral Area A Committee. Those communities west along the shore there from Horseshoe Bay, they don't have any formal fire protection. So there's a study right now into what sort of fire protection they could get from either Lions Bay or West Van, and to turn that into a proper contract to protect those communities from fire. The Indigenous Relations Committee, really looking into the same thing that we heard from the Islands Trust folks about reconciliation. And so they'll be making recommendations to the board about what can be done to make reconciliation feel more meaningful, and so that it supports the UN declaration, the UNDRIP declaration on the rights of Indigenous peoples, and also the BC government passed that act on that. I guess it was an act, I'm not sure.
DRIPA, yeah.
Yeah, DRIPA, yeah. So anyway, more will be coming on that, but it's a really tricky one. But I'll be able to bring you more information on that later and how that might apply to municipalities. But everybody's trying to work on that. Minister Rankin will be developing a secretariat by late fall to have an action plan. So there's a whole lot more to come on that. And I think that's it for me today. Thank you, Gary.
Okay, thank you, David. That's really interesting. But I was also going to ask you, you're on the Transportation Committee, and Maureen?
Yeah.
Right.
No.
So,
well, which, sorry.
The Ferry Advisory Committee, which is a subcommittee, right?
Well, it's not really a subcommittee, Gary. It's a separate committee, because we used to sort of consider it as a subcommittee, but it's a BC Ferries committee.
Okay, so it is not aligned with the municipality then?
It's not supposed to be aligned with the municipality. We try to do that as well as we can.
Yeah, it would just be nice to get an update on the project down at the dock there.
Well, yeah, I mean, they did some proposals. They've done some consultation on that. I think that's closed now, but I'm not sure. But they did get quite a lot of feedback. I was able to look at some of it, and I'm presuming they'll be bringing a report to us, another month or two, I guess. I'm not sure. But they're the ones who are obviously leading that. In terms of the timing of their capital projects, they're not too, they don't have a lot of money to spend right now. But the planning was moving ahead. And I think, I guess I gave a report to council. I gave a report to the Transportation Committee on this. I mean, I was very impressed with the work that they did. They took it serious. They read our materials. They talked to us carefully, listened to us, and came up with some ideas. So, it was very constructive, I felt, the work that they were doing.
Oh, that's good. We'll look forward to some kind of report coming to council anyway. It's just nice to know what's going on down there.
Yeah.
Gary, I wonder if it's time for us to ask BC Ferries for a council update. We have generally done that fairly often. And if you recall, the launch of the engagement, the last round, it kind of came out of the blue. I mean, it was there and we didn't know, and it was like, it maybe just a polite letter saying, we hope things are going well. Can you let us know how things are going? Effectively.
Maybe a phone call to Melanie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wasn't thinking of
staff
advisory committee. I was thinking of BC Ferries itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They're currently in phase 4, and there's 2 more phases after that. And so the phase 4 is options development, and then they move towards the draft plan for the terminal development plan, and then they move to phase 6, would be the final terminal development plan. And they're just focused on the immediate sort of short-term improvements, as well as they're really starting to look at the 25-year horizon when they would do a realignment. Possibly, that's what they're thinking. But I do think it would be a good idea to, if they were able to present to council, because the BC Ferry staff that have come and worked with municipal staff, they've done a really good job.
Yeah.
And they've got a pretty good presentation. So I think it could be a good delegation to council.
Yeah, no, I think that's a better idea. That would get us certainly involved there. Sue Ellen?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think with COVID times and Zoom, it's even easier for staff to move around and have better connectivity with council. So I think that would be good. I'm getting some questions that I can't answer.
Well, that's sort of what I'm feeling too. I'm just feeling a little bit out of the loop. Not that we have to be in the loop and everything, but
Let's add one little bit to that, Gary. We know that BC Ferries is asking the provincial government for help in electrifying their fleet by shore services. So we could just, whether that's the kind of ferries that they're talking about don't operate out of Horseshoe Bay. So whether Horseshoe Bay is in that list or not, it'd be nice to know.
Yeah.
Because there are smaller ferries, those the hybrids with a possible battery electric system.
Okay, well, maybe we'll sort of advance something in the next little while here, maybe the next council meeting to get an update there. I'm just getting a little conscious of the time. So Allison, did you have something else?
I just wanted to say, if you go and look at the thing that Sue Ellen sent around from that the Islands Trust got, they've ordered battery electric ferries, and they want to make them all electric operational. And it's the new class of ferry, and most of the Southern Gulf Islands ferries and some of the northern ones have to be replaced. Ours doesn't. It's still not at end of life.
That's
so
right.
They were wanting support from the communities that the ferries were going to serve, and they've applied for it's a federal provincial infrastructure grant they've applied for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's. I think we'll have to have some communication with them. Let's set that up for the next meeting. That would be awesome.
What they're doing down in the terminal is what we really need to.
Well, that's what I'd like to know. Okay, so the next one is, of course, the Island Trust Municipal Trustees, Fast and Kale, update to council on the Island Trust business.
Go ahead, please, Sue Ellen.
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me. I was just going to invite anybody who wanted to come to the next Islands Trust meeting and present in the town hall, or ask, anybody can ask questions of staff at any time, but if people do want to do that, which I saw some comments about the beginning, March 9th, 10th and 11th is when the next Trust Council is. And now that we're all doing Zoom, it's easier than ever for people to participate in those meetings if anybody's interested. And I would just refer people to items 12.2 A to E in our agenda, and that's it.
All right, thanks, Sue Ellen. Michael?
Okay, just very quickly, the Islands Trust Review, which is taking place, the steering group are just preparing now the motion that has passed in a format and in conjunction with BC Bid, so that the bid can go out to public, and we're working with the CEO and chair of the trust as well. So with the steering group, we hope to have it ready really this week to go to in a format acceptable to BC Bid to take forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. All right, Councillor Nicholson, update to council on Metro Vancouver Regional Parks Committee meetings. Maureen.
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Allison Morris, update to council on Translink Mayor's Council meetings.
So the last meeting was January 28th, and the public meeting was very short, no delegations, unusual. And just discussing about the work plan, the COVID recovery and rebuilding, renewing the 10-year vision because it got a little sidetracked because of COVID, that's the mayor's vision that was done, and it's sort of a 10 years, what you're going to do when, and working on updating phase 2. Government relations, getting to know all the new people in the cabinet and that are responsible. There's a whole list of people that are responsible for TransLink and have different fingers in the pie with the new ministers and deputy ministers. So it's going to be interesting there. And then the other was just a goodbye to Kevin Desmond, and because he's off as of this last week, February the 5th. And working on several extra meetings, working on Transport 2050 and working and aligning with, I think our timeline and Metro's is going to mesh so we can do some joint consultations and things like that. So it's really interesting, all the different ways transportation is going to change. Beam me up, Scotty, isn't all that far off.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that it, Allison? Thank you.
Yeah.
Super. Okay, the items removed from the consent agenda. We had a couple.
Yeah, we dealt with a couple. The only one left
First there.
3.2.
3.2, yeah.
So I pulled this one and I'll just speak to it briefly. I'm in support of all this. It's just changing from revoking Old Islands Trust local trust committee bylaws, which was the 3-person committee that used to be on Bowen before it became a municipality. And my question is for Hope. I think there's one there that says not applicable. Bowen Island Local Trust Committee Impact Assessment Bylaw, number 56. That sounds pretty good to me. And I'm wondering why it's not applicable or why it's on this list of local trust committees bylaws to be repealed.
What I meant by not applicable, sorry, what was that?
Oh, just the third one down.
So what I meant by not applicable was there's not a new BIM bylaw that replaces that bylaw. So for the majority of the bylaws that are being repealed, there's a new BIM bylaw that has been in effect since that bylaw. So it basically supersedes that bylaw, but it still needs to be repealed. But there's just not a bylaw that's the equivalent of that.
Okay,
is what I mean.
Thank you. Then I don't think we should be repealing it because as a municipality, we inherited all the original bylaws. And if it's still on the books, then I think we should at least look at it and see what it is before we throw it in the trash can.
Right. Well, I looked at it and it did not seem relevant any longer, but I'm happy to remove it from the.
If you could just remove it from the repeal list and maybe we can refer it to a committee or something like that.
Okay.
That would be my proposal. So I would be happy to make the recommendation that Bowen Island, that bylaw number 534, 2021, cited as Bowen Island Local Trust Committee bylaw repeal bylaw number 534, 2021. With the exception
you're going to have to remove that from the list first.
Yeah, so I move that we remove Bowen Island Local Trust Committee Impact Assessment Bylaw number 56, 1998 from the list of Local Trust Committee bylaws to be repealed.
What was the bylaw? Does anybody?
It's basically, it's likely covered off with more of our current environmental and land use planning bylaws, but I can't say that with certainty. But it's an older impact, basically like an environmental impact assessment.
Sorry, I would pull it up right now, but I can't minimize the Zoom call without ending it.
Okay, well let's just pull it out. Looking at the time, let's just
fine. There'll be other repeal bylaws coming forward at another time.
Absolutely.
I did look at it and I don't think it was, we have all sorts of other things that replace it. It's not just one specific bylaw.
I just don't like the process of tossing out bylaws without even looking at them. So
I think they were attached to the report.
I didn't see it. Page
what's from 1998.
So, yeah, so it really is looking at like what the impacts are for the proposed activity or development that it's in the 90s, that was all the rage, doing impact assessments. And so I think it's a lot of the terminology has just changed, and that, but it is a very good point, Sue Ellen, and we should be able to speak more specifically to that it is that those provisions are covered off in our existing bylaws.
Why don't we just leave it as it is then, and we'll pull that out and we'll get just a report on what it was and make sure we don't do that again, I guess.
Yeah, I'm looking at it just now. It's got a lot of procedural information about how to apply for development permits.
We got all that.
Which is it's been replaced by.
Yeah, it looks pretty
It
old.
includes like looking at aesthetic values, cultural heritage, agricultural land, like forest reserves, and
That sounds good to me. I would
But
like to
that's
have a
all in
look.
the development approvals bylaw. And in our land use bylaw.
I'm happy to just move the bylaw as amended and with the removal of that and come back at a later date.
Thank you.
In the
That's
essence
what I
of,
would
in the
recommend.
essence of time.
Yeah,
What I recommend at this point in time.
so I'll move that bylaw number 534, 2021, cited as Bowen Island Local Trust Committee repeal bylaw number 534, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time as amended.
Okay, I'll second that. And no further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Thank you. Okay. Did the other one, Sue Ellen, you had the other one, but that was your answered on that one?
We did them at the beginning
Yeah,
before
you're
the
happy with
delegation.
that, okay. And then over to you, Michael, for
How did you pull 310?
3.2.
Michael?
Yes, just very briefly, I was on that committee when Jack Adler asked me to join, and it's very ably there are two councillors there in the form of Councillor Morse, Councillor Nicholson, and I think two able councillors is sufficient. So I said they don't need three. However, if you're ever short of a councillor, do let me know. I'll be pleased to stand in. But I wish you both with it, because it's something I was involved with since about 2013, before I came on board as a councillor. So it's good to see how it's migrated into its present form. So good luck with it.
Okay, thanks, Michael. If you want to read the recommendation.
I'll move that council accept the resignation of Natasha Vaz and Councillor Michael Kale from the Community Economic Development Committee, and the council direct staff to send a thank you letter acknowledging their service.
Okay, I'll second that. And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for your service, Michael.
Thank you. And I actually don't need the letter, but I'll take I can watch the video.
All right. Okay, so I think that kind of wraps things up here. We don't have, I don't believe we have any questions for question period. I don't see anybody else on board. It's way too late now. So on a happy note, we will adjourn the meeting at this time. Thank you very much, everybody.